Until I forget my phone, and then I'm running around trying to find it just like. Hey, good evening. I do have that it is 7 o'clock, so if you could please stand and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we will move to call of order, and we'll just leave it to those of us up here on the stage. Sarah Hoyer.
Eric Deecher.
Jason Schultz.
Matt Hirsch.
Lauren Tice Miller.
Erica Price.
Rosa Cavazos.
Rocky Business.
All right, we will move to approval of the agenda and minutes.
Move approval.
I've got a motion by Jason
Second.
and a second by Eric. All in favor, show of hands. And I think Rosa or Renee, can you hear us? Renee, can you hear us? Okay. Do you approve the agenda and minutes? Yes. Okay. All right. Sorry about that. It is a 7-0 vote. All right. We will move on to communications, and we have Dr. Pizzino and Dr. Cooley joining us. Mr. Hirsch, you want to introduce them, please?
Dr. Pizzino and Dr. Cooley are from the Shawnee County Health Department, and they are here to talk to us a little bit today and answer some board member questions about COVID-19 and some of the policies we need to follow or policies that are in place. So.
I will say that we asked all of the board members to submit questions, and we did have more than 30 questions asked. They were all submitted to the doctors. Unfortunately, with the amount of time we have today, we won't be asking all 30 of them at the meeting, but we have pared it down to what we can ask, hopefully, and keep within the 30 minutes that we have with the doctors here today. We have divided the questions between myself and Vice President Erica Price, and I will get started. Dr. Cooley, Dr. Pizzino, can you hear us okay? Great. So the first question that we have is, when it comes to social distancing, what is the safe distance with masks and the safe distance without masks? And the follow-up is, what about while eating?
Well, let me get started with that. Good evening, first of all, and thanks for inviting us. I know it may sound confusing, but when it comes to my answer is going to have two components. Number one, from the safety point of view, what we say is that the safe distance is 6 feet or more, and wearing a mask is always a good idea, indoors and outdoors, as unfortunately some episodes around the White House just demonstrated, where a good number of people apparently got infected during an outdoors event. That's from the pure safety point of view. So you're most likely going to reduce the number of infections if you follow those precautions. Mask, 6 feet, and good hand hygiene. Now, when it comes to the determination of what constitutes a close contact, so if there is a case who should be placed on quarantine, then the rule is 6 feet for more than. But the use of masks does not bear any weight in that decision. And the reason is that while masks are very effective, they are not perfect. And there is also no way in retrospect to know how well the mask was utilized and whether the proper procedure were followed. So essentially, we do not take masks into consideration. If two people were within 6 feet or less for more than 10 minutes, then we consider them as close contacts, regardless of whether they were using masks or not.
Okay, that actually kind of answers the next question, which was how will a decrease in the recommended 6 feet of social distancing down to 3 feet affect quarantine parameters compared to our current hybrid model and the mitigations approved by the county? But I think that you just answered that. So the next question we will ask is if we reduce social distancing recommendations within a classroom to fit all of the students into the classroom, what PPE do you recommend? And are there other measures we should be implementing for safety?
The main thing I think is going to be mask, obviously, even though that doesn't have a effect in the definition of a close contact, masks still are important to wear. I think that the other idea that may be helpful is what we consider what we call cohorts. And so a cohort is a group of people who basically are going to stay together all the time. And so that limits the spread or the potential spread that you would be getting if you had, say, students going from one room to another or from one activity to another activity. When you're in a classroom and you don't have that 6 feet distance, then also the cohort would be those individuals or those students who are within 6 feet of the student that has the positive test. So it doesn't necessarily mean that all the students in the classroom would be considered a close contact and be under quarantine. But certainly the ones that would be within that 6 foot radius would be. So I think mask and cohorting are probably the two of the key things that you could do. And obviously washing hands and maintaining that distance as much as you can.
So as a follow-up, how effective are plastic dividers in reducing the transmission of COVID-19?
Well, there's not a lot of data that tells us that the plastic dividers work much in preventing it, okay? And one of the issues that we have with the plastic dividers is unless they go from floor to ceiling, obviously you're going to be able to get some potential spread of the virus around those plastic barriers. And this is especially true when you think about aerosolization of the virus. So if you look at CDC and KDHE, they do not consider plastic barriers as preventing anything as far as what our definition of a close contact is. They're fairly expensive. Is there anything wrong with them? Not that I know of, but they certainly aren't going to necessarily decrease the number of students that would be under quarantine.
Okay, and what about face shields? Would face shields and masks allow us for more protection and decrease the chances of staff and students quarantining?
Well, face masks are sort of the gold standard in preventing the transmission right now. Face shields are an add-on. So they are recommended, especially under certain circumstances for certain people, as an addition to the masks. They are not recommended as a replacement for masks. So Again, I hope that answers your question. We need to think about prevention of transmission as a multi-layer approach. There is no single intervention that's going to be 100% effective in 100% of cases and situations. But the more layers you put between two individuals, one infected and one that could be infected, the less likely you are that the virus will be able to jump through all those layers and come through and infect the person that is not infected. So the more of those layers and barriers you have, face shields, it's just intuitive, the face shields cannot have the kind of protection, tight protection that the mask can afford. Again, the more you can use, the better.
So for a little clarification on that question, I think there's a thought that the face masks with protection of eyes along with, or the face shield along with the face mask would somehow prevent or reduce the number of quarantines if there was exposure. Is there any accuracy to that?
I will give you my answer. I would be curious to hear what Dr. Cooley thinks and knows about it. The protection is relative. Yes, it's true that the face shield comes in front of the eyes, but most face shields, some more than others, but essentially all of them, are open on the side and are open at the bottom. And so the virus can still circulate through those openings. If you really want to protect the eyes, the best way to do that is using goggles that come and just enclose your eyes. And again, the use of those face shields will not reduce the number of isolation and quarantine orders that we need to issue. What it can provide is some additional safety, so you may end up with fewer cases. But once you have the case will be investigated and dealt with exactly the same way as if there was no use of face shield. Anything you want to add, Dennis?
No, I think you explained it right. So certainly a face shield along with the mask can give more protection. So it may prevent more of the infections, but it really does not enter into whether or not somebody gets into quarantine, okay? Sometimes that's what's confusing is that we talk about that with healthcare workers and they use different types of masks. Those are in surgical masks and face shields. And CDC and KDHE consider healthcare workers sort of in a separate group because of their training that they have in the use of personal protective equipment. So that sometimes will get confusing too, but Dr. Pizzino is exactly right. While it helps in preventing the infection, it really does not change whether or not somebody would be in quarantine or not.
Okay, I will pass it along to Erica. And before I do want to mention, I've neglected to mention that all 30 questions that we did submit did get responded to, and all members of the board have those answers. So Erica, do you want to ask your questions?
Sure. There seems to be confusion over how many days someone needs to quarantine or self-isolate. Can you explain the isolation process and the family quarantine that would follow?
Yes, first of all, it is confusing. So it's not because...
I'm going to let you handle that one.
Yeah, I need some help too. But I've done that many times, and every time if even seasoned people like me and Dr. Cooley, sometimes we stumble upon the answer and we make it more confusing than it needs to be. Anyway, let's start from the premise that the maximum incubation period for the virus is 14 days. We know that much, even though typically it's shorter than that. But 14 days is the maximum that we know. So anybody who is exposed needs to be on quarantine for 14 days. And that's because any time during those 14 days, the person may become sick and develop symptoms and then become infectious to others. So that's the purpose of quarantine. After 14 days, even if there was an exposure, we are pretty sure that if nothing happened during those 14 days, the person that was exposed is not infectious. If somebody is indeed infectious, becomes sick, the period of infectivity, the period during which they can transmit the virus, is up to 10 days. for the sake of simplicity. And then there are some other provisions, without fever for 3 days and all the symptoms improving, but let's just focus on the number of days since that's what the question is asking. So a person who is diagnosed with the virus will have to remain in isolation for 10 days at the minimum, and more if the symptoms do not improve. During those 10 days, if the person is in contact and continues to be in contact with other family members, household members, the person can expose any of those household members throughout the entire 10 days the person is infectious. So for the purpose of quarantine of a household member who lives with somebody who's infectious, that 14 days count starts from the last day of exposure, which is 10 days after the person became symptomatic. One alternative to that is that sometimes even people who live together, once somebody point, if there is a level of separation, we would have to discuss with you and make sure that the level of separation is adequate. Then the last day of exposure would be, the last day before the person separates. When I say separate, doesn't necessarily mean they have to move out, although that's definitely an option. There are people who use, if they have an RV in their backyard, or some people will even rent an RV to put in their driveway. So the person can go in isolation, sit in an RV, and everyone else in the household is not exposed. In that case, the 14 days count starts from the last day of exposure. Actually, always starts from the last day of exposure, but in that case, it will start from the time the person is separated from the rest of the family. So just for ordinary, so to speak, exposure for people who do not live with an active case, 14 days is the standard. For people who live with an active case, after the active case is diagnosed, is 14 days from the date of the last exposure. Did I make it worse? Is it a little more clear?
I'm going to have to ask it again. I know I will.
Dennis, anything you want to add?
No, you made
To make it even more
clear. So it could be up to 24 days in some situations. There are some occasions, like Dr. Pizzino said, where you actually completely separate out. You have to completely separate. This isn't, I come out to the kitchen to get my food and then they go back in. No. They have to be separated. And so because of that, when we look at this, obviously a young child, a 5-year-old, a 7-year-old, they're not going to be able to completely separate. They cannot manage on their own. And so those things have to be taken into effect. There are some instances, but we look at it very closely and make sure that indeed there is complete separation. It's things like maybe if, you set the meal at the top of the stair and the door is shut and then all the utensils are plastic. I mean, it's that type of separation that people have to be aware of. It's not easy to do. If you've ever tried to do that, it is not easy.
I think the idea of the RV in the driveway is great. It's brilliant.
Okay. Do you anticipate an uptick in numbers of positive cases as we move into fall and winter and are confined in more indoor spaces?
Short answer is yes. I don't know if there is a longer answer, but it really, intuitively, yes, I would expect that. Because a lot of activities in the last 3 or 4 months have been outdoors. We were blessed with a relatively mild season, both summer and spring, and now the fall. And so I don't know you, but I've been out to dinner several times the last few weeks, and being able to eat outdoors was definitely an element for me to decide to do that. When things are starting to move outdoors, some people may decide to just not do those things, but other people may still decide to do them, and definitely the risk is greater indoors, other things equal.
Is there a magic number or percentage of cases that would need to occur within a building before it's shut down? And also, who makes the call to shut a school down?
Dennis, you want to take the first part? These are actually 2 questions. The first part was about the number or percentage of cases that would need to occur in the building before it's shut down.
Sure. there's no magic number, but when you start getting the number of cases in COVID cases in your school that's around 5% or more, that's when we start looking at that. And we actually have done some research, and that's kind of a standard number that a lot of places look at. But just realize that what we look at is we don't look at just that number. We'll look at other things to some of the situation with the school, what the building setup is like, et cetera. So 5% though is kind of when we would really start, I think, to look closely at that and work with the school the school districts to decide whether or not closure would be the best approach for it.
Okay.
And then the second part of the question was, who makes the call to shut the schools down?
Well, again, as I said, we certainly want to work with the school districts and make that decision. And John Franco can correct me on this, but the health department actually does have the ultimate right to make that decision if in a public health instance we felt like the school needed to be closed. But, what we want to do is work with the schools. And so we want to make sure that we're doing the right thing, just like the school districts want to make sure that we're doing the right thing. So we would certainly want to make sure that we were in consultation with the school districts and that, again, we're in agreement with what we should proceed with.
Yeah, I agree that the local health officer, in this case myself, has very broad authority to take action to address immediate public health threats. And so that would be the scenario under which we would close a school, essentially. But in practice, I think that's quite unlikely for several reasons. First of all, we believe more in targeted interventions than in very broad interventions like shutting down an entire school. You are more likely to see conversations around a certain classroom, maybe having to be on quarantine, either through a cohorting system or just staying home. So the nature or extracurricular activities being put on hold. Shutting down an entire school is a pretty drastic decision, and we don't take it lightly. Second, from the practical point of view, I think you are more likely to decide yourself that you have to close a school just because you don't have the staffing necessary to run the school. Because if you're going to have 5% or more of staff and or student affected, between the people who are affected and are at home in isolation because they're sick and the people who are on quarantine because they were close contacts, you may run out of staff very quickly. So at that point, you may have to decide yourself, we have to shut down the school for a certain number of days.
Okay, thank you. How safe is it for kids to return to school with 100% attendance?
Can't just put a score. I wish we could, because it would make everybody's life much easier if you knew that a certain activity is 100% safe and another one is 80% safe. You can make your choice. In reality, the answer is going to be it depends, and I hate when people give me those answers, but it really is true that it depends on a variety of circumstances. Primarily, it depends on how much social distancing and mask usage you are going to be able to implement in your schools. And I know that social distancing in particular may be problematic if you have large classes and relatively small classrooms. But those are the two major elements. Then there is a hygiene, of course, but the hygiene is relatively easy to take care of. And your bathrooms can be sanitized, you can put sanitizers in every room. That's a technical solution. It's relatively easy. It's how to keep those kids 6 feet apart for the entire duration of the school day and make sure they wear a mask. That's going to be the hardest part. So to the extent that you can implement successfully those three strategies, social distancing, masks, and good hygiene, the more you can implement those, the safer it's going to be.
Is that your last question?
It was.
Okay, we have one last question since we still have just a few minutes. The question is, it's my understanding that there are of quarantines. Are those available for schools in Shawnee County? And do you recommend it, and what would it take to implement it?
So this is actually, I would count this as 3 questions, but that's okay. We don't need any bonus or anything like that. But the answer is going to be a little bit more complex because I think the question is probably not framed in the correct way, and there is a lot of misinformation around this testing business. So it is true that there are options that are being discussed. They are not implemented yet, but they're being discussed at the state level for schools to do their own testing. That would require acquiring a machine, training somebody. I suspect acquire some sort of licensing for the staff who are trained to run the machine, because that's a laboratory process you're going to do. Assure proficiency, keep all the information that you need to keep, running the tests, reporting the results to the people who are testing, and reporting the results to the Shawnee County Health Department. So it's not an easy undertaking, but it's probably going to be an option available. KDHE is still studying it, so there is no final word around that. The part that is not correct in the question is that would be done to reduce the number of quarantine. That's not going to reduce the number of quarantine. As Linda Oaks, our director, likes to say, a negative test is not an out-of-jail card. Meaning, if you have been deemed a close contact, and you have been ordered to stay on quarantine for 14 days, even if you have a negative test, you're still on quarantine for 14 days. And the reason is that the test may be negative, even though you have been infected, because the virus hasn't replicated to a quantity big enough to be detected by current tests. So testing programs are good because they can allow you to, number one, describe the epidemiology of the virus in your environment. Some schools, for example, may decide to do mass screening and test everybody, every couple of weeks or every 4 weeks. Again, I'm not advocating that necessarily. I'm telling you what the discussions have been around is, we can use that to screen everybody. What does it buy you? It buys you that you can identify potential cases earlier, before they become symptomatic, before they infect many other people. Okay, so you can reduce at the end the number of people who are infected. So there may be a role for that, but the role is not to get people out of quarantine. Once there has been an exposure, there is nothing that exposure cannot be taken back. The only process there is 14 days of quarantine.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Cooley and Dr. Pizzino, for joining us and answering our questions, and not just the ones here tonight, but also for taking the time to answer all 30 that we threw at you. So thank you very much for your time.
Absolutely. And I want to spend a word of appreciation also for you as a board and for your administrative staff, the superintendent, all the staff. You collectively, all the districts in the school, and you in particular, you have done a marvelous job in preparing for these circumstances and making sure that you balance the interest of education with the interest to protect the health of both your employees and your students. And I know that finding the balance is absolutely not easy. We know that. So we have a lot of respect for what you're doing, and we try to help you any way we can. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Lauren, before we go on, There was one question you guys had that wasn't answered on the number of incidents by age group.
Yes.
I've got that data. I'm going to take over the,
Okay, perfect.
so the question was, what are the incidents by age group in Shawnee County? And so I went in and, I don't know, what is that, 6 weeks worth, 42 days. I think the question somebody had was for 30 days worth, but I did 42. You can see how many cases by age, so 0 to 9. That averages out to 0.4 cases per day across the entire county for that group. 10 through 17 averages out to 1.3 per day. And then it starts going up. 18 to 24, 3.8 per day. 25 to 44, 6.3, and then 45 to 64, 5.5 per day. Most of our population would be in those age groups. We would have a few possibly older than that, but not very many. Any questions on that data? The second question was deaths by age group, and I couldn't find it by the county on the this all came from the Kansas State Department of Health and Environment website. They did have deaths in Kansas though, but I couldn't find it by the county. 0 to 9 hadn't had any, 10 to 17 none, 18 to 24 has had 3, and then you can see as it goes up by groups. Again, ours would end about that age 64. We don't have very many over that.
Mr. Hirsch, what time period is this? Is this the same as
This
what you
this would be,
showed?
no, this would be all ever since this started.
Okay, so back in March?
Yeah, I believe so, yes. This is total. The first one was just the 6 weeks.
Could you go back one slide, please? There we go. Thank you. Thanks, Matt. What's on there? Thank you, sir.
Right. Thank you for compiling that data. Okay, we will move on to the next item on the agenda, which is comments, concerns from patrons. And this is an opportunity for district patrons to address topics directly relevant to the business of the district or items on the current board agenda. All comments must be directed to the president of the board, and individuals will be given 5 minutes to present ideas, opinions, and/or concerns. The first person, and I will note that we did have 3 emails received. We are not reading emails tonight, but those emails that were sent will be shared with the full board for review. All right, the first person we have is Aaron New.
And just so you know where you're at on time, once you're at 1 minute, I'll hold up a 1 minute sign, and then when it's time to stop, you'll get the stop sign.
One second.
Here now.
Are we on? All right. I think Dr. Prezino and Mr. Hirsch just pinpointed some great points that I was going to make as well. Just that data speaks for itself that Dr. Hirsch just put up there. Faith over fear. We have to, it's not going to be safe. It's not going to be 100% safe. What risk are we willing to take? But we got to get these kids back in school.
Okay, thank you. Kelly Morgan.
I'm Dr. Kelly Morgan, a teacher at the high school and a parent of 2 high school kids. I began teaching in the student-paced mastery learning method in 2007. Before I began teaching this way, I was awarded NSTA's National Award for Excellence in Inquiry-Based Science Teaching, was a state finalist for the Presidential Award for Excellence in Math and Science Teaching, wrote a high school chemistry textbook and many peer-reviewed journal articles, became Shawnee Heights' first national board certified teacher, and was well into my PhD program studying how to help students learn effectively and efficiently based on cognitive research. My students liked being in the classroom, even if they didn't always care for the subject that I taught. By many measures, I was a successful teacher that incorporated inquiry, modeling, and real-world application in the classroom daily. But I knew that students weren't retaining information, that the majority of my students weren't being served by the teach to the middle approach, that students were doing what I asked them to do it, and jump through hoops to get credit for the course rather than taking real ownership of their learning and gaining the soft skills that would help them become lifelong learners. After careful review of a mountain of research, I made the work-intensive switch to student-paced mastery learning to better serve my students. I'm now in my 5th year in the classroom teaching this way, teaching physical science, chemistry, Math 1, Math 3, physics, and integrated science. I've had freshmen through seniors in required and elective courses. Every time, no matter the course or the grade level, I and the students have seen the same things. It usually takes 2 to 3 weeks for students to adjust to this new class schedule. I knew it would take longer this year due to hybrid, and it has. Student-paced mastery learning is new and different and harder. Students are making decisions and being asked to be responsible for their learning. By the end of each year, students report the same gains. Out of the approximately 600 students I've taught this way, students of all levels and needs, I can think of only 3 or 4 of them that did not express at least some of the gains. Student report improved self-confidence, self-regulation, and metacognition, and lowered anxiety. They often comment at the end of the year that they wish more of their classes were taught this way. From my perspective, I show a much greater respect for each individual in my room. Students with IEPs are more easily supported. I get to know my students on an individual level far sooner than ever before. This has not occurred during hybrid, as I've only seen each of my students 5 times, and I completely understand parents' concerns when they feel that this is more impersonal. Under hybrid, I feel it too, and I don't like it either. But when it's done in daily in-class setting, it's actually far more personal than whole class instruction ever was. Students are far more likely to ask for help when they're not having to raise their hand and ask questions in front of their peers during a whole class lecture. The focus is on learning rather than gathering points. The math and science content I teach has become a vehicle through which they are learning those far more important lifelong skills. Students that miss class or are those that are unable to focus during a class period because they're dealing with any number of things teenagers have on their minds are able to come back the next day and be right where they left off. They're not sitting through lecture number 3 when they missed lecture number 2. This benefit is even more important now with quarantines and increased need for mental health breaks. I know that hybrid is not perfect, but I ask all of you to please separate the things that are the result of a hybrid schedule from the self-paced mastery learning format. I want to have my students in my room 5 days a week, but I do not personally feel it's time to have all the students back in the secondary buildings, as that would lead to far greater impact when positive cases are in the building than we've seen this year, since we've been able to maintain distancing with a hybrid schedule. And personally, as someone with multiple chronic illnesses, including autoimmune disease, which is one of the possible long-term effects of COVID, I urge you to not only think about death rates, but long-term effects. But that's not why I wanted to speak to you today. I wanted to let you and parents know what student-paced mastery learning is and what it can look like from the perspective of someone that's been doing it long before hybrid. I realized that we could have done a far greater job of communicating all of this to you before the year began. We're human, we make mistakes. I'm trying to help communicate it now. Please don't focus on the video lectures as being the main point of this format. Hybrid is making iPads and videos seem like the main focus of it, simply because the students are not in our classrooms to do the labs, hands-on activities, and small group discussions, so they're doing them on the iPads instead. Most teachers in the district are new to this and may not have figured out how to make it best work for them yet. Teachers can't make needed adjustments if they don't know what the issues are. Out of my 122 students, not a single parent has reached out to me, yet I've seen several parents of my students making comments in public on social media. If someone doesn't understand why we're doing this or what the benefits of it are, reach out and ask questions. If a student is stuck or struggling or not knowing where to go, reach out and work together. Every student needs a little bit different scaffolding to get through this transition, and I've only seen them for 5 days each so far. Parents are an expert on their child, and I am an expert on science education. Let's work together. Every teacher I know is in this profession because we want to do the best job possible for our students. None of us are making decisions because it's the easy way out, because we don't want all our students in the classroom, or because we don't want to teach.
That's your
Please start
time.
from that perspective, ask questions, and work together.
Thank you. JP Washburn.
So today I was in court. Many of you know that I'm an attorney. I've wrote the board. You're familiar with my comments. Today I was in court representing an impoverished client, someone who I'm appointed to. And her children were removed from her home 2 weeks ago because she hadn't enrolled them 5 days into the school year and didn't have internet turned on at her house. There are also concerns of domestic violence. I'm not here for me or my kids, even though they're struggling. My wife here is working from home and struggling mightily. I've gotten more calls from her about help this year than ever before. No, I'm here to advocate for the students who don't even know that we're having this board meeting tonight. We've got parents in our district, or maybe grandparents or foster parents that are raising kids in our schools who they're not even educated enough to participate in this discussion or understand data. My wife is a data scientist. At least that's what I call it. She's a data analyst. She's worked for the state, and she knows that data can be manipulated to serve a purpose. I think that we are at the point right now where we are over-analyzing this, or we're analyzing this to death. And I say that because I'm a 5 on the Enneagram. And if any of you know what 5s on the Enneagram do, they analyze. And sometimes my wife has to kick me in the butt and say, make a decision. I'm asking the board to make a decision and to lead. Sure, it may be a problem if kids contract COVID. But what we've seen is they're less impacted than adults. When we weigh that against a home that has alcoholism and domestic violence and those sorts of things that are exacerbated by this pandemic, the choice is clear. You as a board cannot sit back and stand idle based on what ifs. Those kids, the IEP students, the impoverished families, they need protected. They need someone to stand up and help them out. They need to be in school. They need to be educated. They need to be out of those toxic environments. I was just mediating a case the other day where the dad was telling me that the kids are at home with mom doing hybrid learning and it's increasing her alcoholism. These are real world stories. Real world stories trump analyzing a situation to death. I live it and I see it every day. I'm asking you to get these kids back into school, even if it's not my kids. Get the IEP kids back into school. Get the at-risk kids back into school. Let's protect those people who don't have a voice. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Kayleen Hewitt.
Thanks for having us come in and speak to you. I'm here with some facts. USD 437 held a special meeting on September 28th and voted pre-K through 6th grade will be in-person full-time starting October 19th. USD 501 started its full-time in-person micro classes on September 21st. 7th, 8th, 10th through 12th, even if not ideal for most, will be in attendance 5 days a week, going half days, which started today. USD 345 kindergarten through 3rd started full-time in person on September 28th. 4th through 6th started today. They will have a trial run on October 21st for the middle school and transition to full-time on-site October 26th. USD 372 started elementary in person full-time on August 26th. They had to go remote from September 1st to September 7th due to COVID outbreak. They were back to school in person learning on September 8th. All these were cited from KSNT, WIBW, CJ Online, as well as all school Facebook pages and speaking to staff at the schools. Dr. Pizzino had said something about the masks. The face shields and the masks don't count for quarantine. It is cited on the KDH website that if a face shield and a surgical mask is worn, they are not considered a close contact. Therefore do not have to quarantine. You guys just used KDHE statistics. We can listen to KDHE as well. Most, if not all, private schools in the county have been back in person full time, and I know at least one that does not require face masks. We are the only district out of 5 in the county that doesn't have a return date as of yet for all K through 6th graders, let alone our middle schooler and high schoolers. The Constitution requires that all kids be given equal educational opportunity no matter what their race, ethnic background, religion, sex, or whether they're the rich or poor, citizen or non-citizen, and that is not happening. Kansas State Education Commissioner Randy Watson, schools will need to rethink the way they deliver education amid the coronavirus pandemic because what is happening now is not sustainable. The Topeka Capital Journal reports that Watson told members of the Kansas Association of School Boards on Friday that one of the best solutions to return students for 5-day-a-week learning while keeping classes sizes to fewer than 15 students while requiring masks and social distancing. I've been in about 45 school districts since the start of school, and I will tell you what we're doing is not sustainable. The CDC has this sentence posted on their website. The benefits of in-person education for fostering instruction in social and emotional skills and providing safety and health meals and support services also must be considered. The AAP, the American Academy of Pediatrics, said, besides masks for children over the age of 2 and adult staff, other recommended layers of protection include keeping desks at least 3 feet apart, ideally 6. There are other schools in the county that are adopting that 3-foot rule. Why can't our district adopt that rule? I'm a mom of 3 kids. I have a kindergartner and a 6th grader in the district. My 6th grader is doing fine academically. Socially, he is isolated while doing his work. My 5-year-old, on the other hand, he does great 2 days in person. When he is at home, he is struggling. We have constant meltdowns because he doesn't want to do the work. We are trying to teach our kids, not only are we parents, but now we have to become teachers. And for the young kids, it is not working. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Tim Watts. We have Tim Watts. Okay.
Good evening. Thank you to everybody for coming out tonight, and I want to thank all of the educators at our school. They're truly doing an amazing job. The message I want to deliver tonight is one of optimism. The doomsday fears that we had in March, April, and May did not come to fruition. We now have 7 months of data to analyze and review to help guide how we proceed. CDC survival rates for 0 to 19 are 99.997%, 20 to 49, 99.98, 50 to 69, 99.5, and 70 plus, 94.6. We also know that having a healthy lifestyle contributes to preventing severe disease. Key areas are 8 hours of sleep, proper hydration and nutrition, and sufficiency in vitamin D, C, and zinc. The most common comorbidities are obesity, hypertension, and diabetes. This is what we should be focusing on with our students and Shawnee Heights staff. However, what you heard tonight was that we need to wear masks, but we don't know how effective they are. We could wear face shields, but we don't know how effective they are. We need to social distance, but I can't tell you how effective that would be. But we know that vitamin D, C, and zinc help with upper respiratory infections. Kansas has over 2.9 million people and only 706 deaths. If I told you in March that Shawnee County survival rate and Kansas survival rate would be 9,997.5 out of 10,000, 7 months in, I think we'd all say we've done a great job. We flattened the curve. We prevented our hospitals from being overran. We have over 175,000 people in this county. We average 1,900 deaths a year in this county. We're at 34 right now. It is real, but it is a virus that we can manage, and we've managed it very well. When we look at the reports up there, we're showing that we're having less than 5 active cases for people under 18. And at this last meeting, we wanted to take more time to see if we could get the case counts to go down. Guys, the time is right now. The time is when it's nice outside and we can get our kids and get vitamin D, open the windows. We're missing the opportunity right now. In December and January, it's going to be much more difficult. We need to not drag our feet and not just bring back elementary. We need to get everybody in, because we know that December, January, February is going to be more difficult than October and November. Kind of jumping around here a little bit. We should use the American Academy of Pediatric recommendations to guide the school return. US 345 is using this, and that's allowing them to come back to full speed. I think we should set up a blood drive for all faculty and staff so they can get a free antibody test. Knowing if they've already had the virus and if they're protected would be something that we should be working towards. We should make health and exercise resources available for the faculty and staff and encourage balanced, healthy living that will help protect them. Communicate via Facebook, Instagram, and other social media outlets to let the community know, what do you guys need from us? Can we help out with transportation? Do we need to help empty out classrooms? Do I need to sign up to be a sub? I'll sign up. I'll be a sub 4 or 5 days a week, or 4 or 5 days a semester, and use my vacation for that. We cannot continue to ignore what the science is showing us and look at the real risk with the current information. In-person school is the best for our students to learn and critical for us to quickly implement steps to transition to this mode. In addition, we need to have clear criteria to analyze a real risk for flexing out of this mode. And I'm glad that we talked about what that would look like in each school. With only 1 or 2 cases, we made a decision 2 weeks ago to delay. We're not going to be able to flex back and forth for 1 or 2 cases. We're going to have to have much more of a tolerance there. It is time to come together, make brave and calculated decisions, and find a way to educate our youth. I respectfully request that you vote today to bring our kids back to school for all grades starting October 20th, 2020. Thank you, Tim and Jenny Watts.
Thank you. Jill Koch.
Okay. Good evening. I'd like to start off by saying thank you to our teachers for doing an amazing job. I have a mother that has taught middle school for 20 years. She teaches in a nearby district, and her school also does hybrid learning. She grades 600 plus assignments per week, makes lesson plans, and has Zoom meetings, responds to parent and student emails. She reads hate emails from parents because she took too long to respond, and so on. She has no life anymore. And it's no wonder 30-year veteran teachers are quitting on the spot. These teachers are stretched, beyond stretched, thin. Again, our teachers are doing a wonderful job in the situation they've been given. However, if they're going through anything like my mom, I fear they'll get burnt out quickly and quit, leaving us forced to do remote learning. School is not just about getting an education. It is about developing skills needed for life that sometimes only school provides. We all know suicide rates are on the rise for teens, which is why our secondary students, not just elementary, need to be back at school. What if a teacher is the only person in their life they feel comfortable talking to about their problems, and they don't have access to that teacher because in the classroom? A return date for secondary students needs to be established. Brown University recently released a study that looked at data collected from more than 550 schools across 46 states over a 2-week period starting August 31st, with more than 300 schools maintaining some level of in-person classes. Researchers found that 0.23% of students had confirmed or suspected cases of the virus, while the rate among educators was 0.51%. The rates confirmed cases were lower at 0.076% for students and 0.15% for teachers. Another study done by the American Academy of Pediatrics data that the hospitalization rate for children was 8 per 100,000 compared to 164 per 100,000 for adults. American Academy of Pediatrics excuse me, Pediatrics also states that 3-foot social distancing can be used. Why are we using adult guidelines and not pediatric guidelines? NPR also released data for every 100,000 people, 52 people contracted the virus. That is the hybrid model. Those going to school full-time in person, for every 100,000, only 21 people contracted the virus. According to this data, the chances of getting the virus are higher in hybrid model. Shawnee County has approximately 177,000 residents. Of those residents, there have been 2,864 cases, which is 0.016% of the population. Of those positive cases, 0.011% have ended in death. This August, Shawnee County made Resolution 49. In this resolution, it states, this resolution is not intended to regulate public and private schools. Schools are encouraged to work with the State of Kansas and Shawnee County Health Department to determine whether and how to safely open and how to safely conduct school-related activities. Schools are exempt from this. In fact, Dr. Bazzino made a post on his Facebook on August 25th saying, the Board of County Commissioners adopted a resolution that includes an exemption for schools from all requirements contained in the emergency public health order issued by the health officer. This applies to both classroom and extracurricular activities. Our district sets their own rules. The district is treating the school like a business when schools are exempt. If you're stating you can't bring kids back to school because of social distancing issues, that's not true. You made the rules, you can change them. You could get all our students back in the classroom if you wanted. You are taking recommendations and treating them as requirements. I do not feel like the state or our school board is living up to the expectations or delivering the quality education implied. This is not the quality education our children need and deserve and that we're paying for by living in this district. Thousands of kids are being failed by our district, including children that are neglected, abused, and privileged. You must do better. You stand for what is right and fair for our children. Be their voice. That is what you have been elected to do. No more half education. And I'd like to give a special thank you to Rocky and Rosa. Thank you for voting in favor of our children returning to the classroom. Thank you for remembering that you are there to be their voices of the parents and the students. There are dozens of parents proud of you for fighting for our kids. There is no reason all of our kids can't be in the back in the classroom. Teachers are essential, school is essential. We need to start acting like it. All our students, preschool through 12th grade, need to be in the classroom full time. If they can have large groups together for athletics, and those large groups are not social distancing nor wearing masks, why should the classroom be any different? Are athletics more important than classroom education? If it's such an issue, why not have parents sign waivers like other schools in Topeka are? Data has been presented, but ultimately decisions are being made based off of fear and not facts. We need to quit living in fear. You like to
Time
make
is up.
decisions based on numbers? Here they are. You have a higher chance of being killed in a car wreck, but that didn't stop you from driving to this meeting. You've been presented with data. You know the
Thank you.
negative
That's your
effects.
time.
Okay.
Jacqueline Koch.
Good evening. My name is Jacqueline Koch, and I am a freshman at the high school. How can we maintain a healthy social, mental, and emotional life and get all of our schoolwork completed on top of that? I understand that it's a new situation, and we are all trying to get settled in, but we shouldn't jump right in. The best thing to do is start slowly and gradually increase the schoolwork. There's a teacher who told the students that we must walk before we run. It's like practicing a marathon. You're not going to show up before you run the thing. You are going to practice until you are able to run. The runner will start off with short distances and will most likely be somewhat slow. As they practice more, the runner will increase their distance and speed and continues until they are ready to run the race. So shouldn't we do the same for school? And why do we need to clean desks and hands constantly if the virus does not spread through surfaces? The hybrid model is the most difficult model because we have to constantly switch back and forth between a different schedule, which causes us to be overwhelmed and confusion in our brains. The workload for our secondary students is again very heavy, like it was this past spring, but worse. The recommended 8 hours of sleep every night is not possible because students must stay up late in order to complete their work. We're so focused and stressed on trying to stay caught up that we aren't even able to retain the information we've been given. The new method of teaching is terrible. It's so hard for students to actually learn something. We get a 20-minute Zoom check-in each morning. We are basically self-taught the other 3 days of the week. Us middle school and high school students must also use multiple platforms and multiple email addresses to communicate and find our assignments. This is not quality education that I look for. We are unable to come back to school the next day and continue activities from the past days because of the block schedule. I am usually a straight-A student, but I am currently failing many classes because I am so far behind. We only have a few years left before we graduate, and these grades will follow us to college. Things must change immediately. If someone is scared to come to school, then why make us suffer and stay at home? If they're scared, then they can stay at home. And weekends are a break from school, so we should be able to enjoy them rather than doing schoolwork constantly throughout the weekend. I have asked some students to share their experience with me. First, we have Erilyn Willard, who said, "Personally, for me, it takes way more time than 6 hours. It is very hard to stay motivated to do the work online, and many teachers are giving overwhelming amounts of work to their students. Students have become severely depressed and have no motivation to go anywhere and do anything with their friends, and they need that social activity." Magnus Steinloggy said, "Okay, it's a big struggle for me. I don't know how I have assignments done or not, and how many are completed. The learning log took me 2 weeks to figure out, and by the time it was figured out, we canceled that learning log. I have never been this stressed before in my life. Isaac Umscheid said, "We are facing a lot of the same issues as last year when we were remote, but the difference is we're facing more issues. My experience has sucked when I'm online and in class. The teachers online don't know what they're doing when they make their educational videos. Some teachers are too quiet, some talk too fast, and they're the ones that speak every word with no emotion. Also, when we're in school on campus, the teachers are nothing more than a glorified babysitter. They sit at their desks, hardly get up to answer questions from students, and they don't teach us. They watch us. They let us do our work that we do in a class. A lot of students do fine in school, but the moment we don't get a good grade and don't get help, we fail. And when we fail, our parents get mad at us. Our teachers are disappointed because they gave us everything we needed to succeed, but really they didn't. They leave out the psychological materials such as the teacher lectures and lessons, compassion towards the students, such as getting up to answer a question before the student's arm falls asleep, and finally, the peace of mind that a teacher will be there when you need a question answered sooner than 3 hours after a student asks a question. We are facing a lot of the same issues as last year when we were remote, but the difference is we're facing more issues. So please, put us back to school in person. Thank you.
Thank you. Kelly Robbins.
Thank you. I wanted to thank the board, as well as you, the president of the board, for having us here to speak today. Today, I wanted to talk about why the hybrid model is not working, and it actually increases everyone's exposure risk due to the fact that the parents are now having to find alternative care for their children. And thus, that's widening the number of people that their children are exposed to. So on the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday days, you might be checking your kid into evolution gymnastics to babysit them for the day, exposing them to 12 more children, or master overbees. Or personally, I started a pod in my basement, and I have 4 families there, 6 children that we're working with. So looking at an average family size of 2.5 and a classroom of 14 students, their exposure group, their cohort that the county just spoke to us about, is only about 35 people. But you look at just my pod alone, my son and his class of 7, along with the class in my house, each of those groups and each of those students with their classes as well, the number's 70. Sure, that's low compared to what someone that goes to like the YWCA or Master Overbees would be, because those children are exposed to upwards of 200 people. So if we're considering any offline days in our reopening plan, it's still going to be null and wasted because our children are going to be in a daycare situation. And that's the good kids that get to go to those places. And then there's the ones we want to protect that we're already spoken about tonight so passionately, that we need to get them back in school as well. So mathematically, the hybrid model does not make any sense. Then you add issues to that, like my son's Microsoft account getting hacked and into foul language. And I know it was hacked because I was up with the tablet next to me while it was charging. He was asleep when this happened, and at 12:06 p.m., foul language was sent from him to one of his best little friends, and we had to change his account and information. Then also, submitted work has gotten deleted, so our children spend 45 minutes working on a Zern lesson that's a part of this new modern platform that I didn't even know was a new education method that we were using. I would like better communication on that, but that's for another meeting. But the work was deleted multiple times for all of the students in our pod, and we watched them submit it. It wasn't an error on the children's fault, and nothing with them. So they're spending way too much time on their tablets in this model and method, and in the school day, it's about an hour and 15 minutes that I've noticed on my son's tablet that he's spending on, and that's just on his school days. And the environment at home, it's much longer. So they must go back 5 days a week to keep parents from pushing them back into the alternative environments, so our cohorts stay small, because it is smaller if you just have the 15 kids, 14 kids in a room together versus them going to many different facilities. An idea that might work for you for your middle school and high school students to get them back more quickly is just have them stay in a homeroom. So they're only exposed to that one room of children, and the teachers can be available and maybe more available because they're at least in the same building. Don't know if your networks can handle that. I know I had to up my internet this year, added expense there, but maybe that's something the district should look into. So I ask that you vote to send all kids back 5 days a week. Thank you.
Thank you. Amy Kramer.
I just wanted to briefly bring your attention to a population that's been mentioned already tonight, and I want to bring that attention to you again. I have been listening to my 7th graders' Zoom calls, and I had noticed that at the end of that call, the teacher tells the kids that she loves them. And she takes that 10 minutes, she gets 10 minutes, and in that 10 minutes, she has to squeeze as much love and as much positivity into that little teeny window of time, because there may be a kid on that call that's the only positive interaction they have with anybody all day. And I've listened to her do that. I listened today. She said, "Love you guys. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow." That may be all the love that kid gets all day is from that one 10-minute little Zoom call. And, you know, we keep hearing about safety, 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 and it's only safety about this one thing. Life is risky. I thought that a truck was going to pull out in front of me on the way here tonight, and my daughter can attest, I slammed on my brakes. And just getting here was risky. There's a lot of risks in this world. Things aren't safe. And you know what? Sometimes there's families that aren't safe. There are children in our school district that are in unsafe environments. Their homes are not safe. Mr. Hirsch showed the statistics on COVID. There have been 0 COVID deaths in the state of Kansas. The CDC is reporting less than 100, and that's for children under 18 years of age. But I went out to the DCF website to see what sort of child abuse statistics were out there. There were 66,000 Child Protective Services intake reports filed last state fiscal year. Well, not all of those were founded, but 2,807 of them were either affirmed or substantiated. That's a lot more than the 0 deaths that we've had in that same population. So when we look at safety, we need to look at all the risks, not just this one risk. And I found this statement from the National Children's Alliance, which I think is especially important to consider. The COVID-19 corona pandemic is a perfect storm for child abuse. Children are isolated in the home, where 93% of abusers are an immediate family member. On top of that, they're home from school, apart from those caring adults like teachers, coaches, doctors, and other child-serving professionals that are the source of the majority of child abuse reports. This is all during a high-stress, economically challenging time, representing conditions that invariably increase rates of physical abuse and neglect. So these remote and hybrid learning environments, they are creating an ideal environment for child abuse and neglect. Abuse and neglect thrive when victims are isolated, and these young victims are being kept from the caring adults that could help them. There are children in Shawnee County, in this district, where if we're talking about safety, they need to be in this building with caring adults, because this building is safe where home is not. And so we have put a belt, suspenders, overalls, coveralls, whatever else you can put on COVID, but then we've left, you know, a portion of our children with no safety at all. And so with that, I would ask that you would do everything you can to get our students K through 12, preschool through 12, back into the buildings 5 days a week as soon as possible.
Thank you. Stephanie Green.
Hi, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. Our students need to be back in school full time. These children are our future. Yet some parents are experiencing significant behavioral issues. Depression rates have increased. Suicide rates have increased. Statistically, the numbers that we are seeing for COVID are small, yet we're allowing these numbers to make such a huge impact in our children's lives. Let's provide the teachers PPE training so they don't have to quarantine if exposed. Let's work with them to address and alleviate some of their concerns with COVID. And let's bring the students back to school in person full time. If you need help coming up with a plan, ask for it. Many of us parents will help. I'm a parent of a 5th grader and a 1-year-old. I am fortunate in that I am able to work from home at the moment. However, this could change at any time. My youngest goes to daycare. My mom has offered to help should I have commitments on virtual learning days. Our situation should be manageable for navigating the district's hybrid learning scenario. It should be working for us. My son, who has always loved school, is confused and frustrated on a daily basis. There are lots of tears. Last week, my son asked, he's in 5th grade, if he could quit school because he's so frustrated. He's in elementary school. Despite efforts to create a structured learning within our home, he craves the structure of face-to-face interaction that only in-person learning can provide. He needs to interact with his peers. This invigorates him and encourages a more conducive learning environment for him. I, myself, often end up working late into the night to make up for time spent walking through my son through his homework. This, in turn, doesn't allow much time with my youngest son. There are many other families in a similar situation and many more that are in much more worse situation. Controversially, what about the students that are unable to stay home for remote school days? Where are they going? To grandparents, maybe other family members, neighbors, maybe to work with their parents or other places. It seems that this would actually increase the risk of exposure as the student is exposed to more people than going to school on their in-person days. With so many schools returning to full-time in-person learning, it is very frustrating that USD 450 has not yet moved in this direction. My student has asked to go to another school at the risk of not being around his peers. He is desperately seeking to return to school full-time. Jokingly, he even offered to wear a hazmat suit, if that would help. While children are very resilient, this is a lot to ask when they see surrounding schools return to full-time. If these schools can make it work, why can't USD 450? I understand, please understand, this is no fault of the teacher. They have so much on their plate. I can't even imagine the stress that they're experiencing from this current situation. I'm really concerned about sustainability. How long can teachers manage both in-person and online students? When will burnout occur? Will the district be able to replace these students, these teachers? I completely understand the decision for hybrid learning didn't come easily or lightly. I understand that there were many factors that were taken into consideration. I do believe that there are components of online functionality that can work and can work effectively if done properly and integrated appropriately. But my child is extremely extrovert and needs to be back in the classroom. I'd be more than happy to help any way that I can. I will drive my student to school. I will carpool with other families to get their students to school, if it means our students going back to school full-time in person. Thank you.
Thank you. Derek Hodum.
Sorry, I got my stuff on a phone, and so everybody else having papers, so hope phone's okay. I'm a member of this community. My wife and I have 4 kiddos, 3 of which are in Shawnee Heights schools right now. 1 at the middle school, 2 at the elementary. They were excited, really, really excited to come back. My 5-year-old, who was in pre-K at Tecumseh South, told me 2 days before, "I am so excited spring break is finally over." didn't quite understand the time frame and that kind of deal, but to me, I thought it was funny. So our deal is, I know there's a lot going on, and I know you guys can weigh all of the data, and we've heard good arguments. I think probably good caution on both sides. My main concern is that I said I had two boys. The non-5-year-old, my 11-year-old, is currently on an IEP at Tecumseh South and has been since he was 3 years old. We were in 501 at that point in time when we moved out here. We've seen a ton of progress with him in those 8 years. I'll be honest with you, I'll try to get through this without getting emotional because I love my kid and I'm watching him struggle. My wife and I sat 2.5 weeks ago with his specialists and his paras. We signed an IEP, and that IEP says that he needs redirection and refocus and assistance every 3 minutes. Every 3 minutes. My 5-year-old, the kid that was excited about coming back from a really long spring break, can sit at a table and color and do his numbers and do his letters for 20 minutes, 25 minutes, sometimes 30 if he's really into it, without direction, without help. He can trace it. He can do what he's supposed to do. He might ask questions, but he's focused in. My 11-year-old cannot do that. My concern is that there are multiple kiddos, and we've heard people reference, you know, the IEP, the special needs child, and my concern is that we're losing them. I see the frustration in him on a daily basis, and with all honesty, I'm an insurance agent. I am not an educator. Both of my parents are educators. I have the utmost respect, but that is not the path that I chose. It takes special people to do that. I appreciate you guys giving us a voice, and the teacher that spoke earlier, we all appreciate it. I guess I would just ask for a special conversation. Maybe a unique conversation. If we can't look at it for the whole gamut and all of the kids in 450 right now, that these kids on IEPs with special needs be given another look. And maybe that's the smooth end. Maybe that's the way we kind of reintroduce is we start on a smaller population with 5 days. Because these kids on these special plans and with the assistance that's needed, they're dying. They're falling behind, and we don't know how to help them as parents. It's a sad deal to watch, and I just hope that we somehow get back to. I hope we can get back to a place where I don't know if we'll ever know what normal is again, but there's a very unique population of little ones that I really am worried about right now, and I just ask you consider that and the families involved there, and thank you on both sides for opinions and data. I appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Rebecca Collins.
Good evening. Can you hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. First of all, I want to thank you, each and every one of you, for serving our district in this capacity. I recognize that this is not an easy role for any of you. You've heard from many of us tonight, and I will speak as a parent that is begging to support you, to partner with you, to move us to 5 days a week in learning so we can best support our kids. I want to help you. I want to figure out a solution to get us there. I'm a mom of 2 kids in the Tecumseh North School District. I have a 1st grader and I have a 3rd grader. I literally had to look at the calendar earlier today and recognize that it's only been 1 month that we have been in school. As an individual that has the ability to work from home and work remotely, I recognize that that is a privilege, that there are so many other parents in our district that do not have that opportunity. What I will share with you is that working from home remotely and teaching kids doesn't happen simultaneously. It absolutely requires a dedicated adult to be effective in getting the students, redirecting them, getting them through their lessons. None of this is not showing appreciation. I have two amazing teachers with Mrs. Spangler and Miss Dinkle at Tecumseh North. I'm so grateful to partner with them 2 days, but I need more. My kids need more. I'm here representing the kids that don't have a voice. We've heard about so many disadvantaged kids, and I look at my own situation and how my kids are struggling and what they're craving, and I can't imagine how many other students are impacted as well. At the last meeting, the last board meeting, which I listened to live, it was stated that what we are doing is working. And while I can agree with we are keeping kids safe, and that is working, this hybrid model of learning is not working for our kiddos. It is also not sustainable. We heard from another parent that not sustainable from the standpoint of just parents and our kids, but for our educators as well. I'm really concerned about how long can they continue on in this model. Last meeting, the survey results were also shared, and it was very concerning to hear that such a high number of our faculty and staff is not comfortable returning. That's very alarming to me, and I was hoping to hear the flip side of that. What are the barriers? What are the challenges? Is it their health? Is it the health of someone in their family? Is it one more change and shifting gears or feeling stretched too thin already? I think it's critical that we reach out and identify what are those hurdles so we can support our teachers and our staff so we can get our kids back in the classroom 5 days a week and provide them the support that they desperately need. Our kids are depending on us. Other kids, I love to be in the school. I love to work with kids that have special challenges, whether that's my kid or somebody else's kid. It has been a struggle to not actively be a part of our school family. And I worry so often about what are those kids that don't have the same resources that my kids, what are they doing and where are they at? Our kids are depending on us to give them what they need. And I urge you to vote to moving to in-person 5 days learning in our school district. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Okay, that concludes our public comment section. We will move on to our next item. Turn the page on my agenda, which is elementary parent survey results.
Thank you, everyone, for your comments. We'll start with just a reminder what the staff was from the last time. These are the staff survey results I've got first. Just a reminder on them. Staff had about 61%, 62% uncomfortable at that time. One thing I do want to let you know, that survey was done about 3 weeks ago. And at that time, the county was still at a score of 16, whereas now we're at a score of 8 in the county scorecard. The county was also in the red as far as number of cases, and so obviously that did affect those results. We did not resurvey them, so I don't know if that's changed up till this week. Obviously the scorecard has changed quite a bit since then. But it is important as you're looking at that data to remember that. So we move toward the survey results. This is all elementary parents asking them their comfort level with turning the full 5-day return. You can see a completely different result here. We've got about 82.8% that are comfortable with that return at this time. And that survey was completed last week, late last week. If you go by grade level, the same data just by grade level, you can see that they're all fairly similar. It is stronger, obviously, at the lower levels. And as you go toward the 5th and 6th, 4th, 5th, and 6th is not quite as high, but still very strong, at least 75% or more interested and comfortable with returning. This next piece of data was actually done for a couple of reasons. It's basically asking you, if we do go to full 5-day-a-week learning, do you want your student to be in remote learning or do you want them to be on full on-site? So we're interested to see how many people in each of the groups were going to flip sides and change their decision on what they're currently doing. So the people that are currently have their students full remote, 70 of those were interested in returning to full on-site. People that had their students in hybrid, there's 131 that was switched to full remote. So what this is telling me is we're going to have an actual increase in our full remote if we go to a 5-day on-site situation. So we would have to do some adjusting of our current full remote people to make sure we weren't overloading them on number of students. And the last part of this, we talked about if we were looking at the idea of cohort groups, we would still need to keep our buses functioning the same way. If you don't want to cross your students on the buses and have them, I guess call it cross-contaminated, if you want to call it that, but cross their cohort groups, we can only have one student per seat unless they're family members. So this question was asking how many could transport their kids to help us keep that number of one student per seat, and there's about 60% said they could do that. We had a fairly strong number. I believe we had about 1,300 students respond to this and their families out of about almost 1,900 total. So a good number, so a very strong survey. Any questions on those results?
Do we have the capacity to accommodate 40% of the students on a bus?
I believe we should be able to. Right now we're doing half our students at a time, and I believe we could make that happen, yes.
Any other questions on the survey data? Okay, we'll move on to the next item, which is the USD 450 scorecard.
Start with the county scorecard. As I mentioned a bit ago, the county has improved quite a bit in the last several weeks, which is a great sign for our community. Just not, it's been 3-4 weeks ago, we were much higher in the high orange to uncontrolled areas. This week we were at 8 in the county scorecard. The week before this we were at 7, so we were in the moderate category across the board there. Cases did go up slightly this week. That's why we went from decreasing to mixed on the trend. But 7 cases, it definitely was not a huge increase. And so we could easily have been even lower on that 8. So the county numbers are looking great, which is good to see. We were concerned about obviously Labor Day and seeing a bump for Labor Day, and we really didn't see that, which is good to see. That's the county data. And then moving on to the Shawnee Heights data, as you know, we look at that county data and look at the 2-week average and looking at our data. And so that gave us a 7.5, which puts us in the yellow moderate level for the county score. then we also look at our distribution of cases within the school. As you can see below, we track that 2 weeks down there. We've had one positive case in the last 2 weeks. So our schools are doing a great job. Our families are doing a great job of working with this. So we're obviously in the green there. Staff absenteeism has not been an issue either. We added this week, actually last week, the quarantine data. We had a lot of questions how many people were actually quarantining versus live cases, so we added that below. This past week, I think this was Friday's data, we had 3 staff on quarantine at that time, 8 students. So with that said, well, one piece I did want to add on this, we had the one positive case there at the high school. It was our first positive case we had in the building. Just to give you a feel for, I guess, how maybe the hybrid situation and some of the precautions we are taking helped us. When you look at that data, that kid was in class with 8 other classes, and they would have been in contact. If we would have been full in, all students in, they would have had about 138 students they could have been in contact with at close range. Hybrid cut that down substantially. They only had actually 82 kids in their classes. And from that, we narrowed it down to people that were close contact to 7 students and 3 staff members for that one case. We're seeing schools across the state that aren't doing some of the practices we are, social distancing and mask wearing and things like that, and that number goes up substantially, unfortunately, when those happen. So that's always something you kind of have to balance out, but right now we're in a good spot and doing a nice job with that. So the resulting of that is I believe we're easily in that yellow category as far as our building scenario for learning. I am comfortable at this time making a recommendation to do on-site learning with some restrictions for pre-K through 6. Because of the extreme difficulty in doing anything with a cohort or social distancing everybody at the 7-12 level, I'm not ready to make that recommendation there. And so I would recommend that the 7-12 stay in a hybrid. Any questions on the scorecard for us? We won't be voting at this time yet. We'll do that later when we look at the entire scenario, but if you have questions, I can answer them.
Okay, doesn't look like any questions at this time, so we will move on to our action items, business by consent.
Move for approval.
I have a motion by Jason. Do I have a second?
I second.
A second by Rocky. All in favor, show of hands. And Renee's hand is up for 7-0 vote. Okay. Moving on to our next action item, approve USD 450 learning scenario movement.
Large that so it's readable out there. Is that readable by the public out there? Can you read that? Bigger? Does that help? So I just stated a minute ago, we were comfortable looking at an on-site plan. The proposal I'd like to make is a combination of the hybrid and a 4-day full on-site learning plan. So the recommendation I'm going to make is for grades 7 through 12 to continue hybrid learning. Students in full remote learning are allowed to continue with this option. Grades pre-K through 6th, I'm recommending to move into a full day or 4-day full on-site learning utilizing cohort groups. Wednesdays would be the full remote learning day for all students. Students will be allowed to switch between full remote to 4-day on-site. That day I was showing you where the parents were showing their interest in moving from one to the other. We would allow either direction to move at this time if we made this switch. I'm recommending the start date for this be Monday, October 26th. And I'll give some more reasoning behind the Wednesday full remote day and the October 26th start day down below. But let me go through the whole plan, and then we'll go to that part of it. Each class teacher will have all their track A and B students together in their classroom. I do got some data I'll show you also a little bit later on class sizes, average class sizes, so you can get a feel for how big those classrooms will be, approximately at least. These students, when you put them together, is going to be considered the teacher's cohort group. So when I talk about cohort group, I'm talking about that teacher and all their students together in that one group. That's one cohort group. We know that these classrooms could have more kids than make it possible to social distance 6 foot while they're in the classroom. So that's where this next one, social distancing in the classroom will be reduced depending on the number of students and the size of the room. Some classes, some teachers may have the number of kids they can social distance and they'll be great. Others will have too many. And so just want that out there that with this plan, in the classroom, there'll be reduced social distancing. There's another agenda item tonight proposing to buy a desk shield or a desk barrier for every student. This is to provide just an extra layer of protection in that classroom when we do not have the extra social distancing. When a student is to leave their cohort group, let's say for special ed services or other services, we do know that we want those students at all times to be socially distanced from their peers if they are not in their cohort group. So it's important that we don't mix cohort groups together and allow them to not have that social distancing. So anytime they're out of their room, they're expected to follow the social distancing rules with other groups. Same thing with the teacher's classroom. Their classrooms, cohorts, and another teacher's cohort will be expected to keep that 6 foot social distancing. This will include time on playground or other areas where they might be have different groups together. Other than the change in the cohort groups, all other safety measures we will continue to have in place. We will still wear masks, every student. We will still do temperature checks. We will still do all the cleaning guidelines, all the hand washing we have been doing. We'll continue with all those just as normal. None of those change. The only thing that's changing is that cohort group getting bigger than it was before, which could reduce some of that social distancing. With that said, we do know we can't mix the cohorts on the buses, so we will need parents to support us and help us with the busing. No way we can pull this off unless the parents help us make that happen. To give you a little more information on why we made some of the decisions on the recommendation. So why pre-K through 6 all at once? Initially we had talked about we might want to do pre-K through 3 and then 4 through 6 separate. When we got to looking at that, the transition to do both of them separate was a lot of work, to be quite honest. We have to figure busing separately for each group. We'd have to have 2 separate transitions for this to happen. We felt like the scorecard says it's a decent time to make this happen, and let's just do it all at once. So that was part of that decision. And the second is honestly bus routes is a timely endeavor. I told you she needed at least 2 weeks to do a transition. So the more transitions we have in there, the more time it takes. So the decision was let's go ahead and do the pre-K through 6. With that was part of why we chose the October 26th date. That's about 3 weeks. 3 weeks from now is what that is. The reason we picked that date was one of the reasons is parent-teacher conferences the week of October 19th. We know that most of these classrooms don't have enough desks in them right now, don't have enough chairs, don't have tables, all the things that they moved out to create space they're going to have to move all that back in. So parent-teacher conference is actually a really good week to do that. Monday is a conference day, so custodians could get working on that. Wednesday is a remote day right now, and Friday is a full day off for teachers because of the 2 night days they have make up that Friday. So it provides a good transition time to get the rooms ready. It's also going to take time for teachers to many of them have plans made already for weeks ahead of time, and this would allow them to get some of that done and start transitioning into their next schedule. One of the things we'll have to figure out is 2 things, actually. Who's going to ride the bus, who's not. We need to determine who's going to be full remote, who's going to be 4-day on site. That's going to take some extra surveying and questioning of parents. And literally it'd take us about a week to hammer that out and decide who's going where, when they're going, who's riding, who's not. Making sure when people answered the survey they were knew what they were getting into, and making sure that was a possibility. So if we take a week trying to get that done, then that would give Jafon down in transportation 2 weeks to get the routes all figured out. Another thing, we were talking about this the other day, this is probably as good a time as any to give this a try. We have some natural breaks in our schedule coming up that might be beneficial for this situation. If we started the 26th, we would have 4 weeks, then we would have Thanksgiving week. If for some reason we had any issues where we had an outbreak or anything, we could actually take that full week, make it either full remote or Thanksgiving time, and that would provide a week off right there to help smooth things out if we needed to close down for a little bit or do something. Same thing with Christmas. Christmas is in 3 weeks after that, so if that gives another natural break in the system. If things didn't go well for some reason, we would have a break there to help with the situation. So some of this is actually fairly nice timing as far as the breaks we have in the system could help out with that. And the last thing is going to be if any PPE that we do order, whether desk partitions or any other things that you're interested in, they do take some time to order. We've got a vendor already helping us with the desk partitions, and they said if we can get them the information tomorrow, we just going and get it back on time. But anytime you order things in bulk of 2,000 at a time, sometimes it takes a little bit of effort to get that to work. So that's why we chose the 26th. Why Wednesday full remote? That's probably the next question on people's minds. Why not do 5-day in instead of the full remote day? The main thing is there's so many moving parts with the school system. Unless you sit down and actually sit and try to figure out how to make things work, sometimes it gets real difficult. We're going to have teachers that are teaching in the building. They will have kids in their classroom that are potentially quarantined or waiting for test results because they have a family member that's positive, so we're trying to see if they need to test. Are they positive? Are they quarantining? Lots of reasons, but we'll have kids in the classroom. We'll have kids doing online learning for periods of time. And then we'll also have all the remote students that our specials teachers still have to teach. They do not only classes in the building, but they also teach classes to all the full remote learners. Those extra lessons they have to do both platforms take a lot of time. They really do. And a lot of effort from those teachers. And we have to make sure we support them and making sure they are not so maxed out that they can't. That Wednesday helps give them time to do some of that. The third one there, when we switched to not allowing class and a halves for PE, for music, for things like that, some of the specials, we had to reduce some plan time for teachers, and Wednesdays was actually being used to help make that up for some of the buildings. And so Wednesday would help keep that in there. If we took that away, could we figure it out? Probably, but we'd have to do a lot of shuffling to make that happen. And that was because we decided not to do any class and a halves anymore for those classes. probably one of the most important to me, and I think most important to my principals as we were talking to them the other day, was the whole grade level collaboration. The only reason hybrids worked as well as it has is because we asked and had teachers at all the grade levels collaborate together. And they do a lot of planning together to make sure they share lessons, they develop lessons together. And some people may be doing the remote stuff, some people may be doing stuff for in class. That collaboration has been critical to get where we are. If we went to full 5 days, there wouldn't be time in the schedule to make that happen. So Wednesdays gives us time that those teachers can still collaborate. And it's really important for those full remote teachers. Those full remote teachers really rely on those classroom teachers to help with that planning process with them. We moved some teachers that may not have traditionally even been in that age level. And so they are supporting us in those full remotes. And that collaboration is very important for them. So that was an important piece to add. The other reason, we took all our professional development for the year and moved it to the front. As you remember, we took that whole calendar, we took them all out and shoved them to the front of the schedule, which was wonderful for our staff. They got a lot of training on some of these initiatives that we implemented and made that work for them. But there's nothing left in the schedule for the rest of the year. So any tech training that comes up, dyslexia training right now is still in the works. Different trainings that people will need just to shift and to move. Meetings we might need to have. Wednesday would help give us a little bit of time in the schedule that we can get that done. Then finally, one thing that we've been trying to continue to do is keep the cleaning up in our buildings, and Wednesday could allow an extra time midweek to do a deeper cleaning, kind of a midweek cleaning. So 2 days on and some cleaning and 2 days on again. So those are the reasons behind those ideas. I'll open it up to questions because I gave a lot of information there.
Did you have the class size breakdown?
I did. You want to see that?
Please.
Here is the class averages. The colors just represent how many teachers are at that grade level. So at the pre-K, we only have one teacher at that grade level. The blues are 2 teachers at that grade level. We had to move some teachers to full remote, so what those represent mostly are teachers that had to leave and go to full remote. And then we have a couple of 6th grade classes, a couple at Barrington that have four teachers per grade level. Our numbers, some of you may have heard that the 25, the county group max size in the county is 25 for indoor activities. It looks like we could meet that even at our current standings where we are with 24 kids and an adult in the classroom would be 25. And we only had one at that level. So.
Matt, would all these teachers in these classrooms still have the opportunity for themselves to be socially distanced from the kids if needed with these class sizes? I know the kids and the students themselves won't be able to maintain the 6 feet apart, but will the teachers still be able to teach and instruct from a distance of 6 feet from the students?
I've never taught elementary, so this answer is coming from that. I see a head shaking out there from a teacher. I believe it would be very hard for them. Is it possible? I think yes. Is it probably realistic? Probably no. What I know about elementary kids from my kids growing up, I had 3 kids, is it's hard to keep them where you want them at all times, and part of teaching is getting close to kids and supporting them and helping them. And so I would assume it'd be very difficult for them to.
Renee has a question. Renee?
Yeah. Will the families not wanting to go to the 4 days a week be able to move to the full remote? The 130 families or students that requested if we go to the 4 days a week, they wanted to be full remote.
Yes, that was the plan. We would allow them to make that switch at this time since this was a major change in programming, yes.
Okay, thank you.
With that said, we may have to move some teachers to full remote to make that happen. Our numbers there are very high, and
And then we can accommodate the students that want to go, that are full remote now, that want to go to 4 days a week. So we'll be accommodating both ways.
correct. We could go, they could go either direction.
Okay, great.
No, one of the questions I had received from some teachers was, why are we entertaining the switching of instruction, I guess, since when the parents made the decision, students made the decision, they teachers had an understanding that was a commitment for a full semester, knowing that movement could happen one way or the other.
One of the reasons I would probably consider right now is this is such a major change in what we are doing. It's very difficult for me to say to a parent that is concerned about the safety of their student in the school building that they can't go to a safer environment. So if I've got 130 wanting to slide that way, that's with not even everybody surveyed. It benefits me to bring 70 back, to be honest, because it's much easier for me to serve them in the building than at home. So that's part of the reason we wanted to get those numbers.
Was the state involved in that decision as well? On what you could do and what you had to do?
Well, we've gotten guidance from Dr. Randy Watson, our commissioner, asking us to look at ways to get kids back into school. They're recommending looking at that cohort group idea. Shawnee County Health, you heard them talk about if you had to do this, cohorting would be an option. So that's kind of why we've gone with that mode. It allows us to bring more kids into the building without having substantially greater risk to the greater population. Your small group of students in your cohort is you can isolate the risk in that group. And so if there's any concern, you could actually quarantine that group. The teacher could be at home teaching that group remotely. They could continue learning. It would just be in a remote situation. But it isolates them from the rest of the building. So yes, that's where our guidance came from on the cohorting.
Aren't they at the junior high level somewhat cohorted, since they were broken out by grade and then by the different colors and teams there? I know they're not small, 10, but they're definitely...
We do have the teaming concept there, but those would be, what is there, 3 teams? So that's 600 kids, 200 kids to a team. Or I guess 100 kids in a team, because you got 2 grade levels. I heard that. Thank you, Belle. So 100 kids in a team. I talked to Mr. Urick recently and seeing if he thought he had any ideas on how to accomplish cohorting. One of the difficulties right now is we already have schedules for every kid. And so to totally redo all the scheduling and try to find a way to do a smaller cohorting group is going to take some master schedule work. That's not something you can just do overnight or in a week or in 2 weeks. That takes a little bit of work. And so right now it's just not a strong option right now for us.
When is the 9 weeks up? When is that break?
October 30th.
I believe the end of that week is the 26th, 30th, is it?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, to me, it would seem like a natural break or natural time at the end of that 9 weeks to see if we could move forward with the junior high at that time.
The difficulty, again, is we would have to figure out what that looks like and what you guys are comfortable with if we decide to go that route. If we're trying to bringing that number of kids back, social distancing wouldn't happen at all, and then you've got the whole mixing of your groups right now, because we'd have to create a whole new master schedule for that entire program. And talking to Mr. Urick about that, he could probably give me a little better, but I'll try to summarize it a little bit. The issue is not with your core classes. You could keep those kids, let's say, cohorted within math, language arts, science, social studies, and the difficulty comes in the elective areas. And how do you accomplish that without mixing those groups? So I'm saying if I've got a group that's goes to their cores together, that means they also have to do all their electives together. And they have to have exactly the same electives and exactly the same options. So, but some of those kids may be band students, and some may be choir students, and some may want to do robotics, and some may want to do this, but some may not have any interest in any of that and want to do the arts and different things. And so it gets more difficult with that. You have to extremely limit down opportunities for kids if you're going to do that. Then if you mix them, then you're going against that whole idea of the cohorting, and you're just basically throwing that whole social distancing and cohort idea out the window. So you have to be very comfortable with that idea in order to make that decision.
Is this something we could possibly be looking for the start of next semester?
Yeah, I think that's a possibility, yes. It gives them plenty of time to make those calls if we decide to do that, and how they would accomplish that, yes.
Can we go back to the average class sizes per school? I took a picture of it here, so I'm looking at it on my screen. But so I know in the article that came out this weekend with Dr. Watson talking about encouraging schools to bring more kids back, he mentioned keeping the cohorts to about 15. And there are a number of, in fact, the entire column for Tecumseh South, the average class size, all of them are above 15. Shez, we have, hit and miss on few. Tecumseh North, there are some, and Barrington, we also have those. So not only would we be increasing the cohort size there, but we would also be reducing the social distancing in those classrooms as well, because I also know that there's variance in our classroom sizes. So what might be 18 in a class at Tecumseh South may be comfortable, but maybe 18 at in a classroom in Barrington, they're practically sitting on top of each other. So there's a huge discrepancy here. So how I'm having a hard time understanding how we would be able to hold a cohort safely if we're going to come out of the gate already exceeding the cohort number. So is there a way that we could bring the kids back and reduce those class sizes? I don't know if, I know it gets thrown out a lot about how many transfer students we have, if this is something that we need to look into those numbers. I don't know if that has an impact on what kind of impact that would have on our class sizes, but is there a way that we could actually get these cohorts down to that 15?
Basically the way, and this is kind of the idea that USD 501 is looking at, is the micro classroom idea. It takes extra staffing. So every one of those numbers you see that are over 15 would essentially either create another staff member to help you get that down, or you'd be shifting kids from school to school to help reduce that number potentially. What they are doing in 501 is, if you are somebody that can teach in a classroom, you're basically going into a classroom. So they're taking their counselors, they're taking their instructional coaches, they're taking librarians, all these people that have licenses to teach, and they're saying your job right now is not as important as getting you in a classroom. They're putting them in a classroom. And then with that said, there may be other people in your building that you can utilize that are maybe substitute teachers, or maybe they are, maybe your lit tutor has a degree, so we could move them into a classroom. Or maybe we make them, instead of their normal positions, into subs so they can now teach. So basically, they're taking anybody that can possibly go into a classroom and putting them in there to make these smaller groups. And then you also need to have space to do that. For example, you're talking about Tecumseh South there, you'd have to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, is it 8 classes extra. I'm not sure Tecumseh South has 8 rooms separate. So then you're looking at putting people in other places and other locations, which is difficult in our district because we don't have a lot of extra buildings, churches, facilities to do. It's something you could definitely look at. We talked about those ideas, talked about those options, but we also heard there's a lot of kids out in the public that are struggling at home, and those kids struggle when they come to school too. And so we need our social services, we need our librarians, we need some of those people help make sure teachers have plan times and different things like that too, and some of the services they provide, some of your specials teachers and different things. So we thought that if we would go to the cohort idea, that is even though it increases risk some, a much better learning situation than possibly trying to do a bunch of groups at 15. And so that's kind of where we fell. It's a decision that we thought was a better choice for learning and teaching.
What kind of liability do we have as a district if we bring back students and aren't following all of the recommendations that have been outlined by public health experts?
Well, anytime you do anything that increases risk, I think there's always risk involved. We sent that question to an attorney, and I believe I sent that answer to all of you. So he did a better job than me than answering it. One of the things, if we just look at the social distancing rule, the executive order from the governor where they said that schools had to wear masks, they had to do temperature checks, we had to do social distancing. If you read that, the social distancing one was reduced for the classroom environment. It said in a classroom environment where masks are worn, you didn't have to follow that guideline. And so that opens up the window for us a little bit to allow in the classroom the idea of cohort groups. And that's kind of where this idea kind of originated from. It enabled us to keep an isolated group, but not do that. So the county guidelines, right now the counties are just guidelines in itself. The county can make mandates just like the governor can, but they don't have any that we are not following at this time, and we would continue to follow all the expectations out there. So,
if I may, I'd like to read a paragraph from what the attorney sent, because I think it's important to note. He does say that, well, actually I'm going to read 2 paragraphs. It says, if the board is contemplating actions that contradict recommendations, the decision should be made based on the input of relevant experts and specialists who are willing to go on record with their suggestions and the underlying reasons. Ultimately, any board who becomes a defendant in a negligence action will have to demonstrate that it did not breach its duty to care to the students, staff, and patrons of the district through the decisions it makes and the actions it takes. A plaintiff would have to prove that his or her injuries resulted from the breach of duty. The plaintiff would not automatically win, but the district would have a more difficult time proving that its decisions and actions were reasonable. Following county recommendations gives the district a defense in a negligence action. Quote, we followed the recommendations of the county's medical experts, end quote. There is a presumption that following health department guidance is reasonable conduct. If you choose a different course, you will want to be able to articulate clearly what data and reliable expert opinions you utilized to determine that your alternate path was safe. Litigation would likely come down to a battle of the experts, and you would want to be sure yours was reliable and convincing. While the stakes may not be terribly high if someone contracted a routine case of the virus, if anyone requires intensive care or worse, dies after contracting the virus at school, the potential liability is naturally much, much higher. So my concern with this is that, based on what we were told tonight by Dr. Cooley and Dr. Pizzino, the more distance, the better. And we can't accomplish that by having more than 15 in a cohort. And I do know that they mentioned cohorts can be helpful, but again, a lot of our classes are going to have more than 15 students. So I have a lot of concerns with the liability, and that's just for our students. That doesn't factor in the fact that, we have 595 employees who fall into the categories where we did see a number of deaths in our county that we have a responsibility to keep safe and healthy as well. So I'm all for bringing more students back, and I really like the 4 days a week because I want to make sure our teachers have the ability to have the break. I just have a number of concerns about what kind of liability issues this brings to us because we are knowingly considering a plan that disregards a number of the county recommendations.
The problem with that comes, what set of recommendations do we follow? We've got, we have information from the CDC. We have information from the Kansas Department of Health and Environment. We've got information from Shawnee County. We've got all of this information, all of this data, and they can't even agree with each other. Sorry. We've got,
Please hold
we've
your
got
applause.
we have some that are saying that, okay, you only have to social distance 3 feet. We've got some that say we have to social distance 6. You've got some that say mask work. You've got some that, as much as I too worry about the safety of our kids, that has to remain our top priority. How do we sort through all of this information and when it's not even consistent from one group to another? We have to make, the kids need to come into school eventually. Okay, what has been normal in the past is not normal anymore. We eventually have to get these kids back into school somehow. And unless we can magically make 9 new classrooms appear, we're not going to hit that point where we can get those cohorts down to the magic number of 15. Yeah, it's a little risky, but how do we figure out what kind of a risk it is? I've spent 10.5 hours over the last week reading 15 different pieces of scientific research, and they all say they don't say the same damn thing. They can't, like I said, they can't even agree amongst themselves what's the best protection.
I've sat in Zoom meetings with the Shawnee County Health Department since probably May, weekly. And one thing I know from their guidance, and they've been very consistent in telling us this, is they will give us recommendations. They will give us best practice. They will not tell us when's the best time to be in school. They'll not tell us when we need to change, but they will support us. They will give us guidance and recommendations. Then it's up to us to try to make good decisions on that. And so, when Dr. Pizzino and them give us guidance, I believe what they're saying, these are the best practices out there. And obviously, they are the best practices. If we can keep social distancing and mask wearing and cleanliness guidelines up exactly where they want them, you get the results we've gotten already, we've had really good results. And that is definitely a valid comment. But they'll also say, we don't know when you can make that next step or that next leap. That's a hard decision to make. And so what they default back to is always, here's best practice. And so.
The group I don't want to lose sight of is our staff, and the fact that, we have 631 employees in our district. 265 of those are our teachers. And we can go through the numbers talking about 19 custodians and around 100 paras. But when we look at the statistics that were given tonight about the age group of COVID-19 deaths, in that age group of our teachers and our staff, of the 678, 50 of those fall into that age group. So they're a group that we can't lose sight of. We know that we can't maintain social distancing with these numbers, even in the cohort numbers. I mean, they're not at that magic number of 15. And I think that, I like everyone else up here, we want to get our kids back in as soon as we can. But we need to do it in a safe way, not only for kids, but for the staff. And I just don't see that we can do that based on the 4 days, 5 days, what we're doing. Our numbers that we've had within the district are low. And I attribute that to what we're doing, that we're able to maintain the social distancing. I think the custodial staff has done an excellent job in cleaning and staying on top of things, along with the administrators, making sure that things are being done like they need to be in order to maintain a safe environment for everyone, students and staff. And from that at this time, I think is going to change. I know that the other schools in the area have moved forward to bring them back. And I think that they've done so because of the pressure from outside groups, which is, as you just read, Lauren, is not a justification to do so, which would open up our liability. So at this time, I would not support us moving back. Because if we do, and I've said this before, we take one step forward to getting our kids back. Again, I'd love to be able to do that. But if the numbers go up, as the doctors even mentioned it today, that they're expecting it to go up, especially with the flu season quickly approaching, we don't just go back to hybrid. We go 2 steps back to remote, where we were. I think that we have a better plan for now than we did in the spring, but it's just not a step backwards. It's 2 steps back.
If I could take a second, one of the things one of the board members had asked for, I believe, was to maybe have one of our elementary principals kind of talk through what a day might look like in this new scenario with cohort groups. So if I could have Mrs. Bervert kind of come up and whomever's supporting you on this, maybe talk through what a day might look like and how it might differ from what we're currently doing.
All right, so I had some conversations with my fellow elementary principals, and I kind of have some outlines and some notes regarding your questions on having everyone come back. So the first question was about arrival. Just how would arrival need to change based on a new format of having everyone back? So some thoughts would probably request to have additional staff out with students, just ensuring social distancing. And we would utilize our handheld scanners more frequently. We've got 4 in our building, in all of our elementary buildings, but we've already got a good system of getting the kids in, and we would just need more ways to monitor those temperatures. Another thing is right now we're all doing a grab-and-go breakfast, so we would just need additional staff in the cafeteria to make sure that as students come in and get their breakfast, that they're social distancing and then going back to class. In terms of the cleaning, I echo Mr. Hirsch, just that our cleaning procedures Our staff and our students are very used to just kind of cleaning as they go, wiping down surfaces. Really, we would just want to make sure we're stepping that up and even doing that more frequently. So requesting more wipes, even more cleaning supplies. In terms of remote staff, as an elementary principal group, we feel pretty confident that once we get survey results back, we really believe that our remote teachers, especially those who are remote due to medical concerns, they would be able to stay remote. If at all possible, we certainly want to honor those concerns. Classroom assignments, you all spoke about that already. You know, as parents, all 4 of us, we talked about our goal would be to move as few students as possible, just because our students have really established relationships, our teachers have established relationships, and that's something that is helping all of this school year be as positive as it can be, as those relationships between students and staff. And so we'd want to make sure we honor those relationships and keep students in their homeroom as frequently as we're able to, which we believe we'd be able to do the majority of the time. In terms of pods, Mr. Hirsch has talked a great deal about the cohorts and making sure that as groups of students move throughout the building, we keep them in cohorts, and identifying pods, essentially small groups of students within each classroom, to even further be able to do contact tracing, to further be able to make sure that those students that are within 6 feet, we consistently have the same 3 or 4 children who are together, is what we've talked about, just in knowing which students are near other students, and having that small group be consistent from the classroom to the special setting. In terms of lunch, lunches certainly are going to have to vary dependent upon the building size. Ms. Tice-Miller, you absolutely hit the nail on the head in that a classroom at Barryton is certainly a different size than maybe one at South, which is different than North. We all have very different buildings. Right now at Barryton, we're doing lunch in the classroom. That's worked well. Certainly some of my sections that are larger, where there are where the classroom is smaller and there's more kids, we may need to go to look at a different option. I know at South they're using the cafeteria some. We all have talked about possibly using the gym some, so we would want to look at different options for lunch. For recess, really recess would remain the same, in that classrooms have been playing with, students have been playing with other students in their cohorts. The additional challenge is just making sure that that cohort stays completely separated from another cohort when you're adding double the amount of children on a playground who are running and playing and having fun and doing all the things that elementary children do so well. So that would be the only challenge there. In terms of specials, each cohort would continue to go to music, PE, library, and counselor, just as we have all year. I'll just say for me, 3 of those spaces are pretty large. Our counselor space is certainly not a large space, so that would be a challenge that we would go through. Dismissal, it would certainly take us longer to dismiss, so we would certainly ask for parents and patrons just cooperation with that. But we definitely feel that the procedures we've got in place would allow us to be able to dismiss all of the students if that's the decision that the board makes. We would want to be cognizant of the traffic patterns and making sure buses can safely enter and exit, and kind of aligning the car riders with the bus riders and just all of that process. But we certainly feel like that's something that we could do at all 4 of our elementary campuses. What questions for just kind of day-to-day logistics can I answer? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Lauren, I have a few things to say.
Okay.
I know that we have taken a little bit longer than some other districts, and I'm okay with that. I think that we are doing what we believe to be the safest for our staff and our administrators and our teachers and our students. I forgot them. But I think that I'm okay. So hearing others say, well, this school district is doing this and we're unique and we're a great school district, and I'm not going to take that away from us. And so I'm okay that we're a little bit cautious about those things. I do, however, appreciate everything that the administrators and the custodians have done. And I, have gone round and round about this. But I have full confidence in our staff and custodians and administrators that they are going to take every single step possible to make sure that our kiddos are in a safe environment when they return to school. And I think that they've done an excellent job so far, and they're just going to continue to do that, and make those safety precautions the best that they can for our students. There's no doubt in my mind that they love our kids as much as we love our children, and they want them to be safe. And so I think that, with the principals saying that they're going to continue to make these steps happen, I just really believe that when our students go back to school full time, if it's the 4 days a week, that they're going to do everything that they can to make sure that our kiddos are safe. I know that, I feel like we have to get our kids back in school. I don't know if there's ever going to be a right time, but I feel comfortable and confident with, the kindergarten through sixth graders starting to go back. I like that we're doing the 4 days a week and taking that 1 day off to allow for extra cleaning and those things. So I think that is a great step, and I still feel like that gives administrators time to do the things that they need to do behind the scenes. And then I want to discuss when we get our middle school and then high school students in. I know that those teachers are probably a little bit more apprehensive, and that's okay. But I don't want to wait until, January when we move our middle school students back in, and then wait another quarter before we get our high school students back in. I think that that's too late. And so I would like us to come up with a plan to get our middle schoolers back in school sooner than January, and then work to get our high schoolers in January and see how that works. But for now, I am comfortable with the plan that Mr. Hirsch has come up with, because I think that we need those children back in school for some emotional and social beings that they're missing and they're lacking. So that's where I would stand if we took a vote.
That liability question, however, is a serious and valid concern. There is not going to be, I feel, there's never going to be the time to bring everybody back to school. We have to put our necks out on the line. We have to take the chance. But the flip side of that coin is some parent going to come after the school district if something happens? Then their child gets COVID and ends up taking a serious turn for the worst. For her, and I am not knocking this opinion. Everybody here who wants to bring kids back to school 5 days a week, how would you feel if your child got sick and
One of the things I think we need to always remember, please, this is our discussion here.
It was a rhetorical question.
This, one of the things we need to remember, we have options for people who are concerned about having their kids here, and that is the full remote option. So if a family is uncomfortable or has concerns, that is a valid option they can choose. And we've been allowing that consistently to make that switch. So don't forget that we still have that option on the table. When we made the decision several weeks ago to have a USD 450 scorecard, the idea was that sometime we might hit a point where it would be okay to come back. And so I had a teacher ask me, so let's reverse this. Let's say in 2 weeks the county gets a lot worse. We have a bunch of cases in our building. Would you reverse your decision? I said yes. If the scorecard says it's not a time to come back, I would fully change my mind on this. And so these are data-driven decisions in a way, but there's also decisions that can be made that families can't have choice, and I think we've got both of those within our system. So,
the reason I started asking the question is, while I was out and about a few days ago, I had a parent come up and confront me, and my point of view then, as it has been since this started, to put it bluntly, it's awfully hard to educate a sick child. It's that much harder for a sick educator to present any kind of an education. And this is stuff we seriously have to think about. When does the time come where we have to balance the risk with, for lack of a better description, the reward? And I personally think that time has come.
It took a lot of soul searching and debate and conversation. And when we made the decision to go to hybrid, one of the reasons I voted for hybrid was for the very reasons, Mr. Washburn had stated. I felt like we needed to see those kids, at least at minimum, see those kids. I'm going to read a little excerpt from an article by KSB, and it's entitled, "I'm from Kansas. Board members need grace as they navigate pandemic in a pressure cooker." Every decision is wrong. What seems like the right decision today looks wrong tomorrow. What is the right decision for Juan is the wrong decision for Rachel. And what is good for Mr. Washington is unfit for Mrs. Jones. Hashtag let them play. Hashtag protect our teachers. Hashtag we reopen when. Hashtag reopen now. These decisions that we've all been taxed to make weigh on us every minute of the day. They take up our dreams at night. They consume us while we're working. Every voice is heard, every single one. For an email I get wanting kids to come back 5 days, I receive the same amount of emails from parents wanting their children to stay hybrid. So please know that we are listening and we are taking everyone into consideration. Absolutely everyone. When we made the decision to go to hybrid, I was comfortable with it. And I did, we have to think, when is the right time? Well, there's no one going to tell us when the right time is. We're it. And as much as I wish someone could tell me. But I feel, Rosa, I'm with you. I feel like I'm comfortable going back. I'm comfortable sending my kids back. But then I have to look at all these teachers in the eye that are nervous and know that I've upset them. And I'm going to have to look every other parent in the eye that I said, okay, we're going to go back. And they don't want to. It's a big decision. And we're not going to make the right one for everybody. And I guess I just needed to get that off my chest.
Yeah, Matt, I just have a few comments or I'd like to add to the conversation. And I really appreciate everybody's on the board, their perspective and their opinion on what we should or shouldn't do. I appreciate that nobody's getting overly emotional about anything and, screaming or yelling at each of us for maybe having a different perspective. So I appreciate the civility of it. The parents, I really appreciate you guys coming out, missing, important things in your lives and time with your families to share your opinion with us. Matt, I really appreciate your leadership and trying to move us forward, not taking the easy answer or the easy out. Seeing the opportunity and presenting a recommendation to us. We've been inundated by people that have different opinions, and feedback we've gotten has been all over the place. Some of them students are doing great. This is the best experience for them. Some of them it's been a total disaster. And these are people that I know and trust, and they're not over exaggerating their situations. There's been honest and emotional conversations with people that care deeply about their mental health for their kids and the struggles that they're experiencing having. And lots of really lots of tears and real things with depression that are real. With that, our primary function as a board is to make sure every kid is educated. And right now, with our model that we have, with the hybrid model, there's inequality between those students who have economic security and family support and those who don't. Specifically, if families have single parents or both parents need to work, this model doesn't work, and it disproportionately affects the lower income and the minority students. And we need to make sure that we're educating everybody, and not just the ones that have a nuclear family where they're going to be supported. All those students and all those families matter. I can't help but think that maybe some of this hybrid model might be putting some of our elderly population at risk. So, because I've had so many conversations and so many emails from parents who say, while I'm at work, my kid is being watched by grandma or grandpa, and those are the people in our community that are most at risk. I mean, they're the ones that are, when you see that graph, those are the ones that are most vulnerable to the disease. And so if we're pushing them to grandma and grandpa 3 days a week, and the kindergartner, the first grader, the second grader, they're not showing any symptoms, and they may not even know they're sick, and they're bringing that to grandma and grandpa's house. I can't think that maybe we're a disservice to our community by that. I know it's a lot to think about and a lot to weigh, but I think we owe it to everybody and to our kids to make sure they're getting the education that we're supposed to be giving them. Thank you.
Renee, did you have a comment?
For some reason, I'm going to get emotional. Erica, I appreciate your comments. I think that was something that both Lauren and I posted on our Facebook pages. The excerpt that you had shared with us. This is by far and away the most difficult decision I've ever had to be involved with. And I respect each person that's on the board. As Erica said, either way that we vote, it's not going to be a popular decision with the other section who is against us. So just know that we are doing the best we can with the knowledge we've been given, protecting the most people. Yes, children are vulnerable, so are our teachers. And I just know that I respect you all. And for those of you that are listening, I am not there because I have a handful of risk factors, and so I can't take chances that other people can. And so I am certain that that will influence the way that I raise my hand or don't raise my hand tonight. Thank you so much.
So can I ask a follow-up question, kind of along the lines of what Rocky was saying? I have concerns about some of our at-risk students or our students in higher poverty levels having reliable transportation to school. Will we be giving them priority on the bus to make sure that they can come to school on a regular basis and their attendance won't fluctuate because maybe their parents don't have reliable transportation, or they're already at work by the time time the kid has to get to school, or those kinds of issues?
Yeah, my hope is that we can transport anybody that needs to be transported. And talking to Jafon in transportation, she felt like the numbers I gave her were doable. So I don't see it as a concern at all to get every kid that needs to be here to school. But if it comes to the case, yes, we will make sure, and to me, we'll figure out a way to get everybody here. We actually had some buses we were going to sell that we have not sold yet, partially because we wanted to make sure if we needed to have an extra bus or two to make something happen, we could. So.
If we were to go to this model, are our schools ready to can our schools be ready to handle it by the 26th?
Yeah, I think in talking to the principals, we felt like it was definitely doable in the buildings to have that time period. Our major concern's always been just making sure we can get transportation online by then, and she felt like she could do it as long as we got her some pretty good data by the end of the week.
I just have one final thing, is that, talking to teachers at the elementary level, I am so afraid that they are going to burn themselves out at both ends if we continue doing the hybrid mode. And, I know we've had, emails from them, and some say we want to continue this and some say no. And my neighbor down the street is, she was like, I'm going to take an hour or so to enjoy my time right now, even though I should be home grading papers and it's Sunday, and, but my kids are coming home and I'm going to spend some time with them. And, every time we get an email from a teacher, I just tell them, thank you. Like, I can't thank you enough for what you were doing. And I hope you were somehow finding some work-life home balance. And I think if we continue this way, we're going to lose our teachers, and I don't want that to happen because they're amazing. I know we're not, we're in a tough situation, but my heart goes out to them because I know they're working, 18-hour days, trying to have some time with their family as well. And that scares me. And I feel like this will help at least those kindergarten through sixth grade teachers, hopefully a little bit, get some normalcy in their life so they're not spending their Saturdays and Sundays working all the time. I care about our teachers just like everybody else does here. And I want all of our teachers to come back next year. And I'm afraid if we keep this route, we may lose some really good teachers because it's a lot to ask. So my heart breaks for them.
We have made sure teachers have been well informed about the plan. We sent that out to all of them. They are familiar with what we're talking about tonight. We've talked to them also a lot. I sent an email out not that long ago about work-life balance and the importance of doing that and giving them 100% permission to do those breaks they need to take. And if that meant reduction in what they did, so be it. I mean, that's important to keep yourself healthy, keep your family healthy, and if you do that, then your work is better off in the long run anyway. So we've been talking to them about that, and we will continue to monitor and work with that, and I know they appreciate your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I echo what Rosa just said. I know I go drive by Tecumseh South on a Saturday or Sunday afternoon, and it's nothing to see, 5 to 10 teachers, cars in the parking lot there at the building, doing whatever it is to try to make the students as successful as possible. So the sacrifices they are making are really incredible. And I know the parents that came here to speak weren't speaking against the teachers. I mean, they're pro-teacher. They understand and appreciate how hard the teachers are working. They just are crying out for help to us and recognize, they're wanting to make sure we recognize that, for their situation, the model isn't working.
So this is an action item, and before I ask for a motion, I just want to make one more comment, and that is, as Erica mentioned, for just about every email that we got asking us to open up 5 days a week, we easily got 1 and sometimes 2 emails asking us to listen to science, to follow the public health experts, and to keep us in hybrid, for consistency. And this wasn't just from parents, these were from teachers and other staff members as well. And, if we end up bringing back, and much like we've talked about, it reduces the social distancing, and it allows us to, if there was a positive case, there would be more in quarantine. So we could have rolling quarantines and stuff like that. So you'd have more kids going back and forth between being in school and remote. Whereas right now, with the mitigation strategies that are working, we have consistency. Our teachers have said that they have been finding a rhythm. And so that stuck with me. And one email in particular said, wouldn't it be amazing if Shawnee Heights was the district that had the most consistency, that we were able to keep our kids in school, we didn't have to flip back to remote, we could keep kids coming and have that consistency, and then, and have it for maybe even a full semester. And when we first started this, we asked parents to commit full remote for a semester, and that would allow us to have that consistency for the semester. With that said, this is an action item, so we can have a motion to stay where we are or to adopt the recommendation from Mr. Hirsch.
I move to accept the recommendation presented by Mr. Hirsch.
I have a motion by Jason. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second by Erica. All in favor, raise your hand. And I see 4. All opposed, raise your hand. Renee's hand is up. It is a 4-3 vote. We have adopted the recommendation of Mr. Hirsch. Okay, the next item on the agenda, to approve desk partitions for elementary students.
So one of these suggestions we have talked about is with the reduced social distancing option is adding some, buying a desk partition for every student. You can see on the overhead what the ones we were looking at looks like. They're 3-sided with windows on them. They're actually kind of a plastic corrugated cardboard with a a thick plastic shield on them. They're cleanable. The ones that are full plexiglass are just really expensive. These themselves are not cheap. You'd be amazed. They want $30 for something like this, but that's pretty standard out there. We liked that they had handles on them. The kid could actually carry them from place to place if they needed to, if we didn't have enough. But the plan was to buy one for every student plus extras that may be needed in some of the specialist classrooms and things like that. So, cost for the bid we had for 1,900 of these was $57,000. So I recommend approval.
Did you
Mr.
say
Hirsch?
these can be cleaned?
These can be, yes. They are a plastic product that can be wiped off and cleaned.
So they're pretty durable? Is that what you're saying?
We hope so. We think they are, yes.
And where is this money coming from to?
We still have a couple $100,000 in Spark money, and so it would come from our Spark money.
Eric, did you have a question?
Well, I was going to comment, Dr. Pisano confirmed what little research that I had done on the effectiveness of these, which really is not very effective.
Mm-hmm.
And it's $57,000 for not very effectiveness, so that I'm just not sure if it would be wise for us to invest in this. I would, any protection that we can provide, I would love to, but I just don't know if it is what we really need, if we can commit those dollars to something more effective, because I think like the shield, the face shields or other items that we know have been more effective would be a better use of our money, in my opinion.
One of the thoughts on this is we've talked all along about layers of protection and providing multiple layers. One layer by itself was never enough, whether it was just distancing or just masks or just a shield or just cleaning. And so this just says if we're taking a layer out, this at least provides another layer of support. And so all by itself, yes, not going to save anything, but could it potentially, with the other layers in there, add some support and add a layer of mental support is also in there too. Sometimes these layers are a mental support in there for a teacher, for a student, for a family, as much as they are a physical support. So,
Renee, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I was going to say what Matt's last comment was, that while it may not be a physical support, it might be a mental support, which might further support the educational process. If there's less stress on the students and the teachers because they feel that there's a layer of protection there. So while it may not actually protect, it might allow learning to happen more because it gives them that kind of somewhat of security. And it will add a layer of protection.
Mr. Hirsch, one that will
That's my only comment.
cover a teacher's desk or larger areas for them?
can you get bigger ones? Oh, I probably. Most of the ones we've been selling to us are this size because they're for student desks, but I'm sure there are some out there for larger desks. We just have to find them.
I would just think if we could offer those to teachers that would like them, I think it would be to invest in those for them as well, as we're talking about layers of support and mental support for them too. I think it would be nice if we could find something, and if they would like one, then we can find the funds to purchase those for them as well.
We can definitely talk to them about options. Mostly what I'm getting from the staff is they would like something like this for when they have to work with kids more individually, and we would have enough to make sure everybody had stuff they need, I believe.
So for the same price, we're, $57,000, could we not rent additional facilities that would allow them to space out more?
You mean like a modular or something like that?
Yeah.
Potentially, but you couldn't provide two, I don't know how big a module you could get for 57 or 100,000 even. If you looked at trying to separate these classes, and by the way, some of these classes from the average class size, we will look at hiring an extra person here or there. There are certain groups that we are not even overly comfortable with and where we're at, so we will look at options for that. The modular is an idea. The question is how many different groups can you get inside a modular and separate it, and it just depends on the size of the modular, how big you can make it. So yes, it's an option. Is that how we want to use our staffing, how we want to do that is a decision I guess you guys can help me make. But.
Move for approval.
I've got a motion by Jason. Do I have a second?
Second.
Renee, I have a second by Renee. All in favor, show of hands. Oh, sorry. All opposed, show of hands. I believe that was 3 or 4. I'm sorry. Renee, did you have your hand up for yes?
Yes.
Okay, can we do a show of hands of yes again? Sorry. 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 in favor, those opposed, 2, 5 to 2. Sorry about that. Okay. Item D, set date for Board of Education work session.
We need to start working on the superintendent search information. We were sent out information on a brochure we needed to start developing. We would like the board's input on that. And then also in working with my goals, we need to do a session where we talk about that a little more. We haven't really had a chance to break down those goals and see what you're really wanting since this summer. And things have changed a lot since this summer, so probably a good time to get back together. So just looking for a day that works for everybody, an evening or whatever you want to do, that we get together for a few hours and cover those two topics.
Our next board meeting is October 19th. And would you like to have this work session before then? That's what the deadline is.
I think it'd be good to
for
have
the-
that brochure done by
Yeah.
the next board meeting, yes, so.
Okay.
If you could have it a little bit before that so Tiffany can finish it once we get all the stuff together and we can collect whatever data she needs to get it done.
I have a conflict on the 12th, but I could do just about any other day of the week.
Is this something you should consider doing on a Saturday or a Sunday?
I don't think we need that much time. It's not going to be a retreat aspect.
13th or 14th is pretty comfortable for me.
Let me make sure my calendar.
I'm available the 13th or 14th also. Anytime next week but the 12th.
Okay.
I'll be out of town Thursday through Monday.
Okay. It was 13th or 14th. Jackie, Rosa?
Either one.
Okay.
I'm checking my calendar, hang on.
Are you that busy?
Oh, you ain't no idea. Sorry.
I can make either of those work.
Okay.
Same here.
So how about we shoot for the 13th?
Okay.
We want to do 5:30?
Wait, Rocky's still checking his
Do
calendar.
5:30 and I'll have dinner.
Yeah, that should
By
work.
dinner?
Actually, I think my kid's in a football game out here that night, so I could go directly from that to this, so.
Okay, so we'll do the 13th at 5:30. Eric, does that work for you?
Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
Okay, do I have that'll be in the professional development room?
She okay?
Yes.
Yeah,
Renee's-
let's do the high school PD room, yeah.
Okay, so we'll be in the high school professional development room at 5:30 on October 13th for board work session. Do I have a motion to approve that date? I do need a motion. Are you making a motion, Renee? Okay, I've got a motion by Renee. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Rosa. All in favor, show of hands. Okay, I've got everybody's hands this time, 7-0. All right. hold on. There we go. Almost missed an action item. Item E, approve memorandum of understanding with Family Service and Guidance Center.
Yes, we have a yearly memorandum with them of understanding. We contract with them for some services of a therapist that's on site. We agree to pay a piece of that based off of a weekly billable amount of $400. Last year, if I read the email right from Dr. O'Brien, it cost us about $1,135. So very inexpensive for the benefits we get for our students from it. So I recommend approval of that memorandum.
I make a motion.
Got a motion by Rosa. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second by Eric. All in favor, show of hands. We've got 7-0. Renee's hand is up. Okay.
Can I make a motion that we take a 10-minute break?
You want 10 minutes?
5, I'd be happy.
Okay. Yeah, we can do that. I mean, it's 9:58, so we want to come back at 10:10?
Sure. Perfect.
Okay, so I've got a motion to come back at 10, to take a recess and come back at 10:10. Do I have a second?
Second.
A second by Jason. All in favor? We've got 7-0. We will return at 10:10.
Thank you.
Now comes the time for the layout of the schools.
Up and to the right. It's the closest one. Out the door to the left.
No, that's okay.
Anybody who wants to sign.
You didn't send me a score once that whole time. I can't believe you.
Was it?
We'll move on to discussion items, status of the district.
I want to thank all of you, first off, for the hard decisions you have to make. None of us, including myself, signed up for this, and I appreciate your hard work. And I get comments from the teachers all the time, appreciative of the serious nature which you take this and the decisions you make. So thank you from my side also, and thanks to all these people sitting out here that are helping us make these decisions also. They've done a wonderful job in their buildings, and I highly appreciate them. November 3rd is election date, and we have always used Shez and the middle school for voting sites, and we again agreed to do that this year. I didn't feel it was in our best interest to change a voting site for such an important election. When you got a presidential election, a lot of people get used to their voting sites, and to change it on them, I didn't think was a good thing to do. So we were looking at options. We basically have two options. One, we could hold those. Shez is the one we're concerned about because they were going in through the building and getting to that community room there. We could change it to the lunchroom, which has an outside entrance. The only difficulty is there's stairs going up to that entrance, and so the handicapped entrance would be around the corner, which would then put people in the playground area, and we're not sure we want to do that either. So one of the options we're looking at is maybe taking that 2nd of November, which is a work day, and switching it with the 3rd. So early think about for principals, is that something we're all okay doing? Because that would have to be a district decision to move both of those. So, but we're probably leaning toward that one at the moment. But we will get a decision for the board by the next board meeting, and if we have to change calendar, we'll do that. We got some questions from parents about why they couldn't see standardized test scores on the Power School parent portal, and turns out that apparently that's been happening for quite a while now. It's not a brand new issue, but it happened a while back. I talked to Carla Murray about it, and she said the reason we could see that in the first place was an add-on software that we used that actually was discontinued from support several years ago. We knew it would keep supporting it through some upgrades, and it made it until Power School hit version 19.4. I don't even know what we're on right now. But when it hit 19.4, it went away. And many of us didn't even know that happened. And so so the issue now is we either have to find a new plug-in to make it work, or she has to do a custom page. And so she has put that on our list of things to work on because I think it is real important to have that available to parents. And but it may be a while down the road. It's a busy time for her with the September reports and stuff right now. So we'll see if we can get that going sometime this year. We got our new hotspots in. We've got 100 from Verizon. We got 50 from T-Mobile and 100 hotspots from Verizon. And so we are getting those out. One of the reasons we changed is hopefully if they can't get service through T-Mobile, maybe they can get service through Verizon. We do have some people that just can't get service very well. The other reason we changed is that the Verizon ones, Blair, nod your head if this is correct, we don't have to pay for them if we're not using them, correct? They can turn the service off?
Correct. We can turn the service off for up to 6 months out of the year.
Yeah. So that saves us quite a bit of money when they're in summertime or if we're just not using them yet. So that was another reason we went with them. So we're getting those out. We'll get more out during parent-teacher conferences when we talk to a lot of parents and see how things are going. And then the last thing I just want to say is Thursday I'll be out of district. I'm going to the Kansas, Missouri Superintendent's Forum. It's a kind of a combo on-site virtual type situation. So I'll be gone all day for that.
All right, Sarah.
Every year, this is reporting season, so as soon as the fiscal year end is done, we move into budget and then we start working on reports. The principals have been working on their building reports really hard. A lot of data goes into that and filters into the SO66. It's the first big report that we do that drives the funding that we get throughout the year. So But there's a series of other minor ones as well, but it'll usually slows down for us around the time of fall break, so mid-October, going into November. But the auditors will be on site next week to do our annual financial audit, and we've been preparing for the last several weeks all of their planning documents, bank revenue, bond confirmations, reports, trial balances, things like that. Do as much work off-site and be prepared when they come in as possible. That's the majority of what we're working on right now.
Okay, thank you. We'll just go by row. Stacy, you want to kick us off?
As Mr. Hirsch mentioned, I've been working with hotspots, getting those out to families. So we have served quite a few because a lot of those families, multiple children are using those hotspots. So one hotspot's actually serving sometimes 2, 3, 4 children. So that's helpful. Also, as Mrs. Hoyer mentioned, this is reporting season. I'm in charge of English as a second language learners in our district. I think we reported 100 identified ELL students in our district. That's down from last year a little bit. We did not have as many new ELL students this year as we have had in the past move-in. So I think that's why our numbers are down just a little bit. And then lastly, we're working, MAP testing is going on in the buildings and remotely. And I just will remind, I emailed the principals this evening that MAP renormed in 2020 here. So you can't just look at a score from last year to this year and think, oh, the kids are so much worse, or they do have to look at the new norming system first and then make that comparison. So don't just immediately make that jump. So we'll be looking at that data as students finish up the testing window here on October 16th. Any questions for me? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Dr. O'Brien.
Okay, I'm not going to take up too much time, but we had about 8 state reports that were due before the end of this month, but they have all been completed and turned in, and that was a big relief. To do with funding, so we got those in, and we'll just next action will be to start getting ready for October 26th, and I think that'll be good for our kids, so our special needs kids. So appreciate it. And do you have any questions? All right.
Thank you. Scott.
Hi, from an HR standpoint, things are going pretty smooth. What's next is we'll have college career fairs, and they are going to be virtual this fall, so trying to learn more about the virtual format and how to present our district. So one thing we're going to do, Tiffany and I are working on this. Tiffany definitely taking the lead, but is like a 2-minute video about our district and our community, and then so when I interview or talk to students, I can show them that video clip. And the 3 things focusing on are just kind of the lake and all the activities that you can do around the lake. Just driving around with Tiffany, we count at least 15 different activities just in that 7.8 miles around. So focus on that. Focus on the community itself, and that how educators can't afford to live in our community. There are some communities in the state where it is difficult for teachers to live in that school district, and in Shawnee Heights, teachers can do that, and so that's a perk. And then obviously our students and staff will focus on them as well. And Tiffany's going to pull off her best Morgan Freeman in the background voice. I'd like to see it. In the next couple of days, if you think of anything else that we really need to highlight, please shoot me an email. So, any questions?
Thank you. Katie.
What is the
Whoa. Okay, well, we are moving forward with coming back on October 26th. Elementary admin will meet tomorrow at 9:30 to get rocking and rolling with that. Other than that, my lovely colleagues here have lots of great things to say, and they're going to keep it short and sweet for you. At Tecumseh North, we're just moving right along with Avid, and all of the great stuff and celebrating being a Panther. Tomorrow's Tecumseh North Tuesday, so if you think of us, wear your blue and yellow tomorrow. All righty.
Thank you, Katie. Jennifer?
I felt a little bit of peer pressure because it's a long list, so condense it. I'm going to bring you a little bit of joy. So you're have a hard job and a little stress. So if you don't follow my Facebook page, or not mine, but the Tecumseh South Facebook page, you should. Every week we have a 6th grade student who is introducing staff to all of our constituents. It's a great pick-me-up. It brings me the most joy every single week. So it's a great thing. It's all him. Everything is all him. It's wonderful.
I've seen it. Interviews with Randall is awesome. It's awesome. He's a great kid.
Yeah, it's a wonderful addition. And that's it. Next short.
Thank you. Becky, and welcome back, Becky.
Yeah, welcome back.
Jennifer really did cut it down though because she had like a whole page. But I came back last Wednesday and I just, words cannot express how thankful I am for our chef staff. Mrs. Baruth kept the building going as I knew that she would. But our staff, our theme this year is Better Together, and they are the best team. And it's so nice to know that when you have to step out, that people step up. And I just truly feel blessed to be back with them and to see all of the starting plans that we made now going, like it's just flowing. So either the plans really worked, which I'll go with that, or they made it work. And that's probably really what happened. So I appreciate all of their help and support. And the only other thing that I will say, we're on an uptick right now of GEI plans. So if you don't know about GEI, General Education Intervention, it's a problem-solving process with parents. We're seeing some kiddos who maybe aren't getting on their daily team sessions, or they're getting on their team sessions and they're not completing their work the rest of the day. So we're getting parents in, families in to come and partner with us to figure out what's going on and how we can help them on an individual basis. So if you hear about that, that's what's going on, but it's really how can we work together to support each kiddo on an individual level. So questions for me? Awesome, thanks.
Thank you. Kirsten?
All right, I'll just highlight a couple things. We have still been using our Buffalo Express to communicate with parents every week, and we have all of our staff contribute to a celebrations video. So if you skip everything else, that's totally fine. There's just information for parents, but I encourage you just to watch the weekly video. It's usually 2 minutes or less. It's just kind of fun culmination of all of the learning from the week. So it's something that our parents have started to look forward to. Just have to give a shout out to Joy Baker, our media specialist who has been rocking the tech hotline, and there have been times I've been in there with her and she'll have mommies and daddies crying, angry, and all the emotions, and she's able to, number one, help them with their tech needs, but number two, by the time they get off the phone with her, they're usually in a pretty good mood. So she just deserves all the kudos. So I want to make sure she gets that. And then lastly, just a heads up that we have 6 student teachers. That's right, 6.
Wow.
In early childhood special education, kindergarten, 2nd grade, and 5th grade. So lots of fun pre-service opportunities at Barryton. Any questions? All right. Have a great night.
Thank you. Stacy?
Good evening. How are you? So it is report time, and I've been worked on a couple of reports with Kristen O'Brien, and then I'm working on the federal funds, the LCP report with the title funds. So that's what's been taking up my time, plus everything else we do. So thank you for tonight and your wisdom and consideration with everything. I know that's always tough. So that's all.
Thank you. Tim?
Sports. We had great participation in fall sports this year at the middle school. The fall sports season is wrapping up with some competitions for 7th and 8th grade football this week. A lot of kids out. It was great to see them competing. The cross country, 7th grade boys finished 2nd at league. 7th grade volleyball were the city champs and league champs. You may have seen that on Facebook, and so that was really nice. Pre-sports, They're beginning, we got basketball trials for the females starting on Wednesday. And so kids are excited
Wow.
about that. A lot of girls are going to make the team. Mr. Manning says, so he's excited for that. Enrollment, 595 souls at the middle school, 274 in 7th grade, 321 in 8th grade. Second largest class we've had go through in quite a while. 10.2% are in cohort C in 7th grade and 12.5% are in cohort C in 8th grade. We work with those students every day to keep them as engaged as possible. Parent-teacher conferences are coming up, and those are going to be a sign-up genius sort of activity for parents. I'll be sending that link out tomorrow morning. Parents can sign up to meet with a duo of teachers. We're trying to create some efficiency. So you'll meet with your science and English teacher, your math and social studies teacher. You'll sign up for whichever duo resonates with you as a parent, and then you can sign up for elective teachers as well. Looking forward to having you participate in that conversation. Any questions for the middle school?
Thank you. Ed?
Tim and I practiced together, so I'll take them in the same order that he did. Our sports season is continuing, our fall sports season. It should wrap up most of the activities by the end of October. Debate will continue on into the semester. We've done well. We've been able to hold every activity, all of our schedule. Cody's done a nice job, and we've recognized him before in terms of adjusting lots of games and some competitions. We've also hosted more than what we have in the past, and it takes an additional group of staff members to do that, so I certainly appreciate people stepping up to take tickets, work concession stands, and do all those types of things that's required of that happening. Our cohort numbers right now are Group A, we have 486. Group B, we have 491, and our remote students, Group C, we have 166. And so those numbers have remained stable, and again, we've been able to accomplish quite a bit with that group. Our parent-teacher conferences, obviously the same days as the middle school. We are not using the sign-up genius, we're using Google Docs. It doesn't work well for us not being in teams to have our parents schedule conferences in groups of teachers, so they need to do them one at a time, and they can kind of hand select that. So they'll be able to schedule 15-minute time sessions with whatever teacher they want to. They'll have to go through one at a time to schedule those individual appointments, but Shannon O'Connor, our instructional coach, is kind of overseeing the process, and she later this week or early next week will be sending out a single piece of information where the parents can go in and just click on whichever teachers they want to in order to access that Google Doc. So while you might have to individually schedule 3, 4, 5, 6, or maybe as many as 7 appointments, it's just a one-stop shop in terms of where you can get that information and actually go ahead and sign up and hopefully get all those meetings in a consecutive order. They will be done virtually. They'll have the option to we'll use Zoom for that, although our teachers will be in the building. So those who want, prefer, or need to because of some hardships with technology can do an in-person conference as well. So, thank you.
Thank you. Blair?
We have all the iPads, I should say probably 95% of the iPads deployed out to staff. There's just small pockets in every building, but every staff member that needs one has a device now. So big thank you to the IT staff for making that a priority and getting all those unboxed and all of that. The other thing is I'm not going to share a whole lot of information on it tonight, but one of the biggest complaints we've gotten through remote learning is all the different logins for the various accounts. So we just purchased basically a single sign-on solution that will help, and so we had the first kickoff meeting next week. So it'll take us about 6 to 8 weeks to get that deployed and all configured on the back end, but that is something that we will be releasing here soon. So watch for more information. Hopefully that will help streamline some of this. So questions?
You said 6 to 8 weeks. Sorry. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Okay.
And a lot of it, as you can imagine, the company is getting just hit from all angles, trying to get, different companies signed, districts signed up. So we're kind of looking at it. We had to use this company for another solution that was being discontinued, and that was one of the options that they had, and it looked really easy to use. So I think it's really good to add that on. So.
And this single sign-on is something that's going to be able to, once we get it in place, it's going to be good even after we get out of this crisis, or as close to normal as what normal is going to be?
It's something that we've continued to look at in years past, and we'll continue to use it moving forward. So, yep. So, anyway, thank you.
Thank you.
Tiffany?
Well, I know what I'm doing tomorrow. Other than just trying to push out as much communication as possible, aiding the buildings and other departments on how to do things like that. I'm really excited to work with Scott to kind of do something a little bit more creative and as far as our promotional video for our school district. So I'm really looking forward to that. And working on the superintendent search materials is kind of my next top to do. I've been doing a lot of working on the broadcasting, trying to perfect it. I've been subbing in a little bit for the high school football and some volleyball games. Just whenever I can. I can't hit all those games, unfortunately, but there are some that we wanted to get, like the senior nights and homecoming and things like that. So hopefully we'll get an ETA on where that company is soon so we can make sure that we can get every game. But we'll keep working on that. Is there any questions for me?
I just wanted to thank you for all of your work. I know what it's like to be a one-person comms shop, and you're doing a really great job for our district. So thank you for all of your work. Okay. Questions, comments from board members?
I had a question.
Yeah, Rosa.
Sorry. Mr. Yorick, I just have had some parents that have asked about masks at football games at the middle school, and so I just thought I would see, I think briefly we talked about this at the last meeting maybe, and wondering if there was some consistency or somebody watching or who they would talk to and kind of what the protocol was.
Mask wearing in our events is a matter of a social contract. We ask parents to wear masks, to observe social distance, and to demonstrate good behaviors for our athletes and for each other. And for the most part, they comply. And there have been some instances where Mr. Mickens or I had to go speak with a parent about wearing their mask, and usually they're fairly gracious about that.
Okay. So they should look for you if there's some families that are without a mask, or Mr. Mickens?
That's right. I would say
Okay.
if you are observing a secondary athletic event and you feel unsafe or uncomfortable, find an administrator.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
Tomorrow, a line from Shakespeare, angels and ministers of grace defend us.
All right. Other comments? I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Rocky, second by Rosa, all in favor. Renee's hand is up, 7-0. Thank you, everybody, and have a good night.